Hey Thomas,
Thought
how are
I
you?
thought I'd go with a funeral theme since everybody said Mercedes' season is already
I
over,
had
done,
I had
bury them, throw
I
them
had the
away. Like,
background now. I'm like, what the
yes,
fuck is Thomas playing today?
yeah. Let's go with the funeral. Let's go with the funeral
let's
theme.
go
Bury.
let's
Let's
go
go
for
with
a
the
burial
funeral. The
ceremony.
season's over.
Oh
Everything's
god.
fire Toto Wolff, fire Mike
Oh
Elliott. Lewis
my
should leave
god.
Mercedes. Go to Ferrari. Do everything. Like Jesus Christ.
Oh
Like
god.
yo. You
It's
people are the absolute friggin' worst. Like, chill
but
out. I
it's so
mean,
oh god. But on a more serious note though, you can understand why people are a bit, I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah, you can
yeah,
understand.
but
Yeah.
yeah, you can understand it. But you have a the season is 9 months long. That's like that. Put it this way, Kingsley. It's like
Yeah.
the first of the Premier League and Arsenal lose to a relegated team.
Mm.
Are you gonna jump and say, oh, and Man
No,
City and everybody when you're gonna jump and say, oh, we lost the league already because we lost to this team, whatever.
no, no, I won't do that. But
Hmm.
it's a different sport entirely,
Yeah,
basically. This
but
is
it's
a sport in which,
the concept is literally the
yeah, I
same.
understand the
You know what I
concept
mean? So
applies. Yeah, it applies. Yeah. Mm.
I can get a
Oh, God.
frustration, but it's a bit the over the top. People,
Yeah,
Lewis
it's
should
not
leave.
helping either. It's not
It
helping
how
either.
does that
So
help anything?
mm,
That
it's not
doesn't
helping.
help the
Yeah.
situation. I mean,
It's not.
if they're feeling like this, do they think that the guys in the team sitting down feel better, like are happy with what's going on?
Mm.
People need to chill out, man, and stop acting like like for some reason Lewis and Mercedes they have this monopoly on winning. Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if you're only happy if you're only here for when they succeed, then
There you know it's true fan. Yeah.
exactly don't be here.
Amen. Yeah.
Yes, that is it. They're going through a difficult spell at the moment, but you know what? It's the name of the game.
It is the name
This is
of the
what
game,
sports is all about. You don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. You're not always going to
especially with
win,
the new
and
new reg.
and it's
Yeah,
a technical sport.
I can never forget um uh, um James Allison.
Hmm.
I think it was 3 4 years back. So no, that was the year before they moved this new regulation forward because of COVID in 2020. I remember, and then he was having this interview, and he said, "Look, new regulation comes with its own set of challenges.
Hmm.
You don't know if you got it right until you hit the track with it because you're limited in terms of tools you need to actually see the performance of the car. You design the car to the best of your ability, and then when it hits the car, the track, that is when you know, okay, this is going to work or if it's not going to work. It was prescient because when he said that, I was like, okay, it kind of bring everything back to earth for me because the idea is it is this Mercedes, they are going to design a rocket anytime. And they forget that what we forget, I must say, personally, me too, is these are some of the finest engineers not in the world,
Man, the
and
rubbish. They should
every
all be
team has
fired. They
them.
should all be fired.
Yes, every
Burn them. Put them on the
every team
stake. Burn
has
them.
this person. So it's a bit. Ah man, when Louis said earlier in the day that it talks about the philosophy of the car, if it was the right one or not, like I knew this was coming because majorly they've solved the problem with purposing because last year the idea was if we eliminate the purposing then we can bring performance to the car. I think in his head now he's thinking even if we bring the performance that ails this car outside of physical purposing fire then we bring performance. I think he's saying that the gap the other top teams are having is too wide for Mercedes to catch up with. But then again, like I wrote in my DM to you, like it could also be a way to motivate the factory to
No, no,
pull all
no.
stops and design something upgrade that would make
No
this
gap
car
is
fly in the
no
air.
gap is impossible to close because if the argument is that Aston Martin has closed the gap on Mercedes and leapfrog them, then surely Mercedes can close the gap to
Exactly.
Ferrari and
Concludes that
leapfrog them
game.
as well.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
But it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
look, at the end of the day, like you said, you're gonna design something that you think is the absolute weapon, and you won't know
Yeah.
how good it is until you put it on the track. And then when you put it on the track, you
On the
realize,
track.
yeah, okay, what's happening?
Okay. This is
Because at the end of because they're working off what the numbers they're getting, and if the numbers they're getting, they're
yeah.
happy with the numbers, and
Exactly.
Then you turn up on track and it's something
And
completely different.
it's not doing the
Because
same thing. Yeah,
I'm
something is
sure,
not correlating.
I'm sure during the
Yeah,
years that New was getting spanked by Mercedes, the cars he put in the wind tunnel were giving him all the numbers that he wanted.
all the
But then
numbers
when he turned
just
up on
yeah,
track and realized, yeah, actually we're off, something's not, you know what I mean, something isn't
it's
right
not
here,
working.
what's going on.
Yeah,
It's a mechanical sport. It's an
it's a
engineering
mecha.
sport.
Yeah, it's an
You know,
engineering sport. Yeah,
no one has the right to win. You have to earn that. You have to earn your wins.
you
You're
have
not
to
giving. It's
earn
not
it.
given to you. They're in a funk right now. They have to dig themselves out of that funk. And for people
Yeah,
screaming, Lewis should leave Mercedes, and I'm like,
go to
why?
Ferrari.
Why?
I'm like, what?
Give me a good
Come
reason
on.
why he should leave Mercedes.
It was not even the
So,
reason. If Lewis leaves Mercedes, this bad app will not. In fact, he will be called all the names under the
but
heavens. There's no two ways
but
about it.
Kingsley,
So it's not even living. That's even the
but
problem.
Kingsley,
And I don't know.
this is what year 11 here. This is 11th season at Mercedes, right?
Yeah,
So
is it 11th season?
yeah, it went to 2013. So yeah, this is
Yeah,
year 11. So in 11 years, his success rate is what?
like 90%.
Is it
Let's put
90?
it that
Because
way.
he has won what? Six titles, seven. Well,
I'm talking about Mercedes as a team now, not him individually, just as Mercedes as a team.
yeah. So their success rate is like 90 on percent, 90%. Just go.
Yes.
Let's go 90%. So he's supposed to
Yeah.
just jump ship because okay, they had a bad year last year,
Yeah,
and
that's
they're
fair.
having a
Yeah.
somewhat tough start. The season hasn't even really
Hmm.
started. You're not going to lose the championship this with one race. You're not going to win it with one
At
race.
all.
So what's
Yeah.
the sense in sitting here screaming, "Oh, these people should be fired. That should be fired. Lewis should leave, and he should go there." And it's embarrassing. They're losing to a
Yes.
they're losing to a customer
Yeah.
team. They've not actually lost anything to a customer team. It's one race.
We're not even sure. The race is not even over. We've
The
never
race hasn't
started the
even
race. It's just
running
practice.
yet.
Yeah, it's just practice. It's
It's
I
is it the best
know.
start in the world? No, it's not. But
No,
sometimes it's
it's
not how
not.
you start; it's how you finish.
It's
And
how you feel.
you know, I'm whilst people are saying, "Oh, there should be this," look, I'm still optimistic that they're actually going to get their act together. Because remember, I said this to you the other on Wednesday that what I think is going on here is this car is the basic car they're working with,
The base cap.
and what they've
Yeah.
got working, that whatever upgrades they have bringing to bring at some point in the season, whether say I don't know when they're going to bring it is probably the actual car that probably should have turned up at testing. This car turned up at
Yeah.
testing so they can get all the baseline data to make sure that, okay,
We can start adding performance
we
one by
okay,
one. Yeah.
we've eliminated the major problem, which is the porpoising.
It was the
It
purpose
was
and it was the
about, now it's
collective
about,
holding of their breath. Yeah.
now it's about adding performance. But look, I get people you can be angry, you can be frustrated, but temper your anger with a bit of sensibility at the same time because
Mm,
it just seems ridiculous. It's a practice session. They didn't go well in practice. They didn't go well in that
it
great
didn't
in
go well
testing.
at all. It
The
didn't go.
season
Yeah.
the season ends in December. We're in March, so that's 9 months away. Let the
Yeah.
season play out. They said George said they expect to be in it, competing
By
by race
by the
six.
fifth, sixth race. Yeah, race six.
We
Yeah,
give them on.
that's the.
I'm willing to give them until race six.
Yeah, I
Then
want to see the progress that
yeah,
car makes on the
but I'm sure you're going to see them make progress at that point. There's no come on, Kingsley. These guys aren't stupid. You don't forget. You don't win championships by being not good at your job.
That's the job. Yeah.
These guys know how to build a championship winning car. It's a difficult. We've seen it when it's not an easy climb back up the hill when you fall down it.
When you're having to catch up, it is not easy at all. You are going to see a lot of, because the other teams are actually improving on their time, and then you're still trying to get up to the level they were the previous year, and it's just the snowballing effect going forward like
All
that.
right.
I believe if they start up adding update to the car, they will see performance. I think the reason why a lot of people are screaming is Aston Martin. They are
You
the
know what I
dark
think
horse here. They
Austin did?
just came,
Sean, I'm coming to you in a
blew every
second.
yeah.
You know what I think Austin did?
Yeah,
I think Austin came to the testing and just basically tuned the car to perform at this track.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I just think they turned up and
But
they just went, let's get
no, but if
to
you see the car, really, the car is stable. I don't think that's track specific was for stability. Maybe for other things, yes, but for stability that the car has,
but
this could have been a corner in Barcelona, for example, or somewhere in Baku. That car, you can
we'll
see
see
it's
how
just
stable it is when
stable.
we get to other circuits. Because
Well, hopefully, yeah. I think we'll
I'll
see
just
that.
use it Australia 2019 as an example for you. That remember what happened? Mercedes turned up, spanked
Mercedes,
everybody in Australia 2019, and then turned up to Bahrain, and Ferrari
yeah,
absolutely put the kibosh on them. If
yeah, yeah.
Charles didn't have that feeling, Vettel didn't decide that he wanted to become a round
He wants to be,
merry-go-round,
yeah,
they would have probably finished that race
that's
1-2. Charles would have easily
one,
won
two,
that
yeah,
race. So,
absolutely.
the Aston looks good now. Let's not get too carried away thinking, oh, it's going to be like that the next race and the next race.
No, I know when
You
it
can't
comes
make
to
that
Aston,
assessment.
I
You
don't,
can't make that baseline assessment on just one race. You can't do that.
well,
All right, let me just hold on a second. Sean, sorry, yeah, you wanted to say something. Go on.
Oh, hi, Thanos. Hi, everyone. How
Hey,
you
what's
doing?
up? We're good.
Yeah, how you
We're
feeling, yeah?
panicking. We're at the funeral. This is a funeral.
God, it's a
Yeah,
week
it's
for the W14.
I
It's a
don't think
funeral.
Lewis' comments are going to help us either, are they? Did you see them?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw that, but
but you
that's
know him.
Lewis.
That's why I.
That's
Yeah,
Lewis.
that's why it's a bit on the low side because Lewis is usually reserved when it comes to issues like this. He doesn't talk like
Yeah.
this. So
Nah, I
for
think
him to say that,
he'll say if Lewis
eh,
says what he
he, he,
feels
he-
most times, so he's gonna
yeah,
say
but
it.
when it comes to the when as bad as that car was last year, you could hear Lewis saying, "Yeah, that we're working. We've got what we got now. We're working hard to bring
Mm.
understand the car better." You can see him making it, but to just come out at FP2 and say, "Look, we're on the wrong track
Mm.
after FP2."
Did he say did he
That
say
is,
they are on the wrong track, or he said
yeah, that's the mess.
was
That's what I
He
read.
he
said
Yeah,
we're
actually
far
said
behind. He said we're far behind from where we
he
were
said we're
this
either
time.
where we are or
Mm.
we're further where we were we are where we were last year or we're further behind.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I don't think he's talking about the
So
concept itself. I mean, the restaurants though look all right. I mean, if you compare them, because if you look at the long restaurants, Ferrari are not doing as much better as us. Um,
no, forget Ferrari is not good. It is that much, but the Aston Martin was
oh God, it's
matching.
mega. But you would hope they,
The guy
yeah,
was
you
matching basically what Mass was doing most of the times, and sometimes it just sneak
even
maybe
yeah,
Mass. I think Massey has an edge over him, but
yeah,
otherwise his pace. I was following his pace.
absolutely,
It was very
yeah,
good. It was impressive. Yeah,
yeah.
it was
Do you
impressive.
not think though that maybe they're running a low fuel or high engine mode compared to what we're
That
doing?
is
Because
what
it could
I.
be anything. So we
That's
just
what I
have to
was
wait
thinking too.
until we see
Yeah.
quali then, don't we? Mm.
Hey, but the fuel
Put it this
the
way: there's a Haas in front of both Mercedes. Do you really think a Haas is
Exactly.
faster than a
And then
Mercedes?
Alpine.
Come on,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ!
yeah,
There's
yeah.
some space.
Like,
There's some pace to
look at what
find. Yeah.
people just look at what you need. Sometimes, not even, pardon my French,
Oh,
because
that's crazy.
it's kind of like it's really annoying.
I mean,
Yeah,
Denny's
no.
posted
Maybe
some
it's just
long
me.
restaurants. So have a look. Even McLaren on the restaurant are quite similar to us. There's just no way that McLaren is going to be similar to us on the restaurant. No chance.
But for
Mm.
some, I followed Luis on board for a
Mm.
while. For some reason, Bono was always talking to Luis about his delta to mass time. He wasn't even concerned about every other
Yeah.
person. It was, this is where you're losing to mass. This is what mass did last round. This is what you are doing now. He was constantly talking about mass.
Max
I'm
and
like,
Leclerc. That's what he was
the
being told. Yeah.
The Aston Martin of Alonso is flying. You're talking about mass. What is this? So maybe they know
Of
something we
course.
don't. Of course,
Yeah.
they know something we don't. So I'm really looking at that from.
Look, even if they get beat by Aston this weekend, it's
We
not
will
the
come
end of the
back. We'll
world.
bounce back
It's
from
a
them.
it's
It's
a
not the
I
end
it's
of
a
the world.
understand.
race.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
race. I mean, last year they were
Yeah.
getting beat by friggin' Alfa Tauri and Alfa
Haas.
Romeo,
Even Haas
so
was quick on a
and
straight line.
Haas. So I mean, so we get beat. So what if you get beat? But like maybe it's just me and my outlook on this whole thing of dynamics of sport.
Yeah.
I kind of understand the. I'm not saying no one else understands it, but my approach to it is not one of let's lose your head at the first sign of trouble.
Exactly. Yeah,
Why?
I'm with you.
What does that actually solve?
Yeah.
He does his
If
sovereignty. Yeah.
if Lewis has to take another year of this, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Lewis knows this is
Yeah.
the game. This is what the game is all about. He
yeah,
knows you're not.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee. It's winning is not your birthright.
It's not
exactly.
guaranteed. Yes.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
if
it would be
he
interesting
has
to
to
see.
look, I still maintain. I said it on Wednesday. I said I'm still excited for the season. Okay, they're
Same
in a
here,
funk
same
right
here.
now.
I can't wait.
I'm excited because
Mm.
I want to see how they're gonna pull themselves out of this funk.
Yep.
Because you
Yeah.
can find some positive or some excitement in a struggle.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
because you
absolutely.
can
Yeah.
because you can see the character of the people you work that you of these people. Are they going to just be like sit back and just take it and like, yeah, it is what it is? Or are they going to buckle down, get to work, and try and dig themselves out? Because no one put them in this
Yeah.
hole. They put themselves in this,
Yeah.
so it's for them to drag themselves
Absolutely.
out. So to say, and Lewis is part of the team. For people to say, oh, Lewis should jump ship, like he's part of the team. Lewis has consistently said this is his team. These are his guys. He has the utmost faith in them. So
Yeah.
why can't we
Yeah.
show them the same sort of faith?
Yeah. Also,
I get it. We as fans of Lewis, we want to see him win. We want to see him succeed. But at the
yeah,
same time, we also have to be realistic and tell ourselves
yeah.
he's not always going to win.
I mean, not everyone out there today. Thanos was having a good day. Look at George. George was struggling. Max was struggling. Max didn't have a good day out there today. And the worst
Yeah.
part is,
The Red Bull is
yeah,
struggling too.
I
Perez
think
looks
the
good.
I
But
think the
Perez looked
problem is the
decent.
tires. I think I've never.
yeah.
I don't think Pirelli can make good tires.
No,
You make good
no,
tires.
they
I
should go
just
back to
think.
Bridgestone again, wouldn't they?
I think they should go back to a tire war.
Mm.
Get other manufacturers. Get more manufacturers in to build tires and let teams go with whoever they want. But I've never thought Pirelli could build good tires anyway. But then in some ways, you kind of have to give Pirelli some bit of a leeway because the tires building are
Mm.
to the specifications of what they're told to build.
Yeah, yeah,
Could do.
that's right.
Yeah.
If they were left to their own will and said no, build a tire, they
Mm.
probably could build a much better tire.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
Absolutely.
think, they've been told we need you to build tires that two stop maximum two stop because they don't want tires that can do one stop. But the teams are so smart nowadays; they've found a way to work around that.
yeah. I mean, my last sense on it, though, Thanos. I mean, everyone, don't be upset, man. Come on. If you look at the
No,
times that
no,
everybody did today, nobody went past the time that they actually did pole position last year. They were what 39 or something like that. Was that the fastest lap today? Um,
the fast.
Yes, it's free practice. It's
yeah,
free practice,
exactly.
so you
And they
can.
didn't even go as fast as they could in terms of
Yeah.
quali laps or even what they did in testing. Was it a few days ago or something? So there is more pace
Look,
to
I said
come from all the teams.
I
So
wouldn't say I
chill
wouldn't
out.
say I wouldn't say people shouldn't be upset. Be upset. You have all
Of
right to
course,
be
you have.
upset. Be upset. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, be upset. But at the same time,
Be realistic in it.
You have.
think. Just try and think about the whole entire thing logically, and just stop thinking. Oh, it is what it is. It's like that on the pit. What
Yeah.
we see there, so that's how it's going to be for the remaining 9 months. We're going to be watching. No, it's not. Because again, the W13 was a much worse junk than this.
Oh yeah.
Started
Yeah. You
worse,
can.
but
Other
over the
worse than
seasons they
this.
made progress and they progress and they will do the same this year.
I believe the team
Granted,
will do better.
I wish they'd started better. Probably like something like an Aston, but they haven't. So it
Yeah.
is. We
But
roll same way. Look,
on the plus side, Perez is going to win the league.
look,
Perez looks fast,
look.
I have to agree with you, Kingsley. Perez is looking mighty. I don't know what's going on.
That's the plus side. He's going to win the championship. He has said it. So
Look, man, I'm riding till the wheels come off. I don't care if 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 they lose three. I don't care. I ride. I don't jump ship. I just find it a bit.
no, no, no. It's not about jumping ship or
I
anything.
find it disrespectful to Lewis and the team for people to be
And
saying,
Mercedes.
"Oh,
Yeah.
he should leave the team." Like, why?
He's part of the team. They all combined to build that car together. So why would he leave them on this first sign of trouble? I don't. It's not in Lewis's character to live that way. I think a lot of people should know him by now that he doesn't operate in that manner. I just wish that he got a good car so he can compete at the front. So if I'm going to see Lewis running in the midfield, that would be painful to watch
Yeah, it'd
because
be
I know what he
painful,
can
but you
do
know what?
in a good car.
You know what?
Yeah,
It
it is what it is.
his run had to come to an end at some point. He was never going to race his entire career being in
Yeah.
that position. It was going to come to an end at some
And
point.
I think what compounds it for me is just Abu Dhabi 2021. If that didn't happen,
I don't
and
think
last year
anyone
Lewis
gives a
was running
damn.
at the back of it, I wouldn't care less. I couldn't care less. To hell with whatever the car builds. At least he's won. But with that whole problem of 2021, and then he comes in the next season and he can't even lay a finger on Massey's car, that was just
And
painful to watch.
we've said it. This has been, I think that has been the major driving force behind a lot of
Yeah.
the reactions we're seeing now. People are still we're still pissed off about what happened in Abu Dhabi, and you know people are still, in some ways, people are blaming Mercedes for what happened in Abu Dhabi, and I'm thinking, what blame can you? Where's the blame?
In hindsight, Toto would have just taken the issue to court, and then probably they'll be caught. Mercedes will be out of the Formula One. They'll say, "Oh,
Exactly,
that's the reason
Mercedes
they are
would have
not
been out
here."
of Formula
Yes.
One. They'd have to pull the
Yeah, well, they are
F1
not
team.
winning either, so people will make excuses because they are not in F1. That's why Red Bull's
Look,
winning, and then he gets the PR out of it. They would have
and there's and
But you don't know. Well, yeah, your car was not going to be good. So at the end of the day, I think if he wants to take that route, then it would be a better route. Just okay, since the car is shit, let's just go to courts, and
yeah,
then
but
you're out
then
of
you spend
F1.
all that money, go to court, and then end up lose because they would have gone the
Yeah,
court they would have gone in front of to appeal it
it's
if it
still an
was
FIA
basically the
kind of
same
thing. Yeah,
FIA court
the
because they
same
had
thing.
what
Yeah,
36
yeah.
judges, and I think also 36 judges were appointed by the FIA. So you kind of like, you know,
But they can still go to his secular court, like his civil. Can they not go
what outside
Outs-
they'd
outside of FI jurisdiction?
no, they'd
Yes.
have to appeal to the FIA, and we all know the
Oh,
FIA would have upheld the
we want
decision.
to sanction
Then
that.
the only
Yeah.
option they
Okay.
had next would have taken it to civil court,
But
and
Of
quick one
course.
on that
the
fairness though.
FIA doesn't recognize the civil court ruling. So
Yeah.
Did they not change some results last year with to do with Alonso? Because that's the first time I've seen them actually changing results that happened the day before. They did that, didn't they, last year, like last season with Alonso? Do you remember that? Or was it to do with
Yes.
qualifying or something? Where Aston Martin
I
was
remember
Alpine
it vaguely. I remember there was
appealed or something, and then
that they had
they
to
changed
reverse
they changed
the
the results.
results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who
Yeah.
knows
I
if we
remember.
went? They might have done it.
but you see, you're talking about changing a championship. It's one thing to change a position between a team that finishes sixth and seventh, as opposed to a
We
team that
changed.
you're changing a championship outcome. They're not
We,
going to
we
do
we
it.
have changed presidents before who lost election and went to court and then they won the case and
Oh,
then the one that was sitting
who are
left,
you talking
for
about?
example.
Trump? He lost.
No, anywhere it's happened. We've seen case you're saying championship is not the highest.
Yeah,
We've seen
yeah,
countries where presidents go to court and then they win cases if they after election. So
yeah.
I
But
I
it's
think
a
Mercedes
different level
didn't.
of court you're talking about. That's a civil. That you talk again. We're talking about a civil matter here. You're talking about civil matter
No, I
as
think
opposed to
nobody has
this.
actually tried. I think the problem is nobody has actually tried it to see if it will work. Therefore, we
Exactly.
just assume.
Exactly.
Oh, that's true.
So somebody has
There
to
you
test it. If it's been tested, then we'll know.
okay.
If the testing is what has not been done before. Yeah.
There you have a point. But again, but you can also base it. You can base your decision on how that court has these people have behaved in the past. So you don't
Yeah.
trust. Then that's the thing. They didn't trust that they'd get a fair ruling. So what's the point in go ahead and
Yeah.
doing it? Because if the stewards who are basically the overseers didn't overturn it, there's no way you bring it in front of the appeal panels, which is higher than them, was going to overturn the decision. And the likely outcome is if they did overturn it, they'd say, okay, we void the race. Then nothing changes. Max wins the championship.
Yeah, they still have leeway there. You're correct. They could have
I
actually
mean,
voiced
so
this.
you do all of that and Max still wins the championship. You kind of like, it still doesn't,
Your
you're still going to be pissed off because, again, the race shouldn't have been voided anyway. If you're going to do any voiding, you void the lap that was invalid and
the
that was
lap.
it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Anthony, what's up?
Good afternoon, gentlemen, or good evening. Boy, what can I say, eh? Another year
Of what?
Of
Another,
agony.
yep, another. I would. I don't want to lose my shit right now because
You already did.
yeah, I know I did, and the reason why I did is because when I listen to Hamilton's comments, which he always tells it as it is,
Mm-hmm.
it's a concern that for him to turn and say that they're either where they were last year or a bit further behind, that is a cause for concern. Like, what the fuck has gone on with this car? Like, they've missed the trick or missed something. Like, it. I understand that it's a evolution of the car that they had last year, and they're going to be bringing upgrades and all that. I'm hoping that because they got enough time with the CFD wind tunnel, they can start producing stuff race after race, and by race 6 they should be somewhat competitive. I'm just thinking to myself, your customer team who you supply their engine, gearbox, and God knows what else, and they also have a guy from Red Bull who, I don't know if he was a technical director or engineer or what,
Dan
has
Fallows. Yeah.
done what he, might as well did the same concept with Red Bull in terms of learn their cars so they can absorb the bumps and whatever. How can they be more competitive than Mercedes? A team that finished 7th in the Constructors' Championship is more competitive than the actual team itself. Is worrying. Like I
Why
said,
is it worrying? It'd be worrying if it was a one race championship.
no, it's not a one-race championship, but
Okay, so why is it worrying?
what do you mean? Why is it worrying?
Yeah,
Because
why is it worrying? Why is it worrying?
listen,
You've
after,
watched 3 days of
yeah,
of testing
yeah,
and 2 hours of practice.
yeah.
The season is 9 months long.
I know
Why are you worried because of one poor week, one bad weekend?
it's not, no, but Thanos, it's not one bad weekend, bro. We saw
It's
this.
one bad weekend. We're talking about this season. We've not even had the race qualifying as yet. So why you say it's worrying?
Because
Why is
if
it what's
listen,
why?
if Aston Martin do bring more upgrades and they are competitive, like you can see, even though it's free testing and everyone said yeah, it's testing, it don't mean nothing. If they are competitive, like they look like they're going to be the season under Alonso, I'll be just like, heads are gonna have to be scratched at Mercedes for saying that. What have we done wrong?
Yeah, no, but you're talking about you say using if in your statement. Right now,
Yeah,
we don't know what the actual situation is because we've not had a race as yet. We've had 3 days of testing, 2 hours of practice. We haven't even had qualifying yet. And so what? Okay, and if Aston Martin beats them over the weekend, does that mean we should start panic?
cause for concern, maybe.
Okay, that's a different. Then that's a different thing.
Yeah, cause for concern, maybe. If
Panicking and saying. I'm talking about getting beat by a customer team who are
Well,
based in and following
there is their
the Red Bull.
customer team. That is their customer team, don't it? Because
Mm-hmm.
don't forget, they supply them with the engine again.
Yeah,
So
I know
is
that.
their
I know all of that.
exactly. So that is their customer team. So
Yeah, I know all of that.
if they get beat by their customer team, then there's some heads have to be
Yeah,
uncomfortable conversations will
if
have to
we
be
get to
asked.
December,
Yeah,
and Aston finishes ahead of Mercedes, then that's a different conversation. But if Aston beats them on the odd weekend, that's nothing. That's like Arsenal losing to Everton once in a while. It happens.
yeah, I know it happens, but to look at the dynamics of where they finished last season to where they are now,
Liverpool finished. Where did Liverpool finish last year in the Premier League?
they finished fourth,
I think no. We finished. I don't care
second.
where we. Okay, where we finished. I don't remember where we finished last in the Premier League.
You
But
don't remember where your team
no, because
finished?
we didn't win, so I didn't pay attention. So, but they finished high up in this, and now Liverpool's what, sixth,
Yeah,
and it tied on points with Brentford and Fulham, I think it is, who have played a game less.
yeah.
So because Mercedes finished ahead of Aston Martin in the championship, it means that Aston isn't allowed to beat them.
No, I'm not saying. I'm not saying that. Uh, you're missing the whole concept. My point is that if you look how last season, the second half of last season, I think Vettel finished sixth in what race it was, and now this season,
Six was the highest finish
yeah,
the whole of last year.
there's the highest finish last season. Now this season, now going into this season, from what we heard in regards to the race simulator, that it was looking promising, and then obviously yes, we've had the free testing. I'm just like, okay, they've made so much gains in a year, and we seem to be struggling either with the balance or the setup or God knows what. I'm just like, what has actually gone on with Mercedes? Like, have they missed?
Yeah, I was going to ask Thanos. Actually, I was going to ask you that. What do you see in this car? That I know they've not actually said anything about. What is it? Drag? Is it handling in
Oh,
corners? Because where Lewis was losing lap time was the middle sector where you have all the corners. So the car struggles to come out of the corners. You can see corner entry and exit. You can see the car almost snapping, and Lewis is wrestling with it one way or another. So if it's a handling issue, that is a design issue. It can be, or maybe tires too. It could be tires,
It
but
could be the wing.
I'm struggling. Yeah, I'm struggling to find because in sector that's middle sector, he's losing like 4 tenths to the Ferrari, for example. He just loses.
sorry, who's that?
I think it's more
Oh
something. I don't know.
God.
Honestly,
So,
Oh God, it's more. Yeah, go on.
yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Today, he said, with this concept, we are at a point where you drop the ego and run with what is working.
What
They
is
have,
working?
I think,
What is working?
what is working is Aston Martin. What is working is Red Bull. What is working is Ferrari. If
Mm-hmm.
you look at their W13 and their W14 already, there is a change in the physical look.
So you
If
say.
you
So
look
you
at
say.
it,
So
there's a
basically,
lot
you're
less
saying.
floor exposed. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
me,
We're
I
not
think
aerodynamicists.
they're
So
going to
we're not
struggle.
aerodynamicists. So look, we're not
No, let me tell
aerodynamicists, so we're
you,
not going to go with
Thanos,
the. No,
it's
hold on, hear me
true.
out. We're
Yes.
not. You nor I are aerodynamicists, so we're not going to go on the concept of they have too much floor exposed, like we actually
No,
know
we
what that does. We don't, so we're not going down that road. We don't know anything
No.
about dynamics. So I don't get this. So they have too much. Look, copying a concept that's already working means you're starting
yeah,
even
well,
from
but the
further back. And you're
people who
looking at the
do are
outside
telling
the
you
skin you're looking at the skin of the red. Hold on, you're looking at the skin of the Red Bull and thinking, okay, if
they're
you copy
telling
the same skin, you're gonna perform just the same. There's more to it than that.
Why am I hearing Thanos and Mo is breaking up?
She needs to come back in. She needs to come back in because her mic's always steady. I don't. I oh
Yeah.
God. I know we're hearing about floor beat to expose like
Exports. No, no, no.
you don't.
That
None of us know
the
anything about
Mercedes.
aerodynamics.
No, no, forget. There's no way Mercedes will bring a car that didn't hit the numbers they were looking for in simulation and CFDs. There's no way about they will bring a car like that. So something in that car obviously gave them the direction. Okay, we're on the right track. Let's do this. So we can't just start writing them off right now. Give them a couple of races. Let them bring upgrade to the car, and then we'll start. Seeing what we'll do
No,
from there.
the whole thinking. People are here
The Aston
thinking it's
Martin that
Mercedes
people
having
it hasn't won a race. Has it won a race yet?
no.
At least the W13 won a race last year.
Aston Martin
So I
hasn't even
don't know why
qualified. Hasn't even
it
qualified
hasn't
as
even
yet.
qualified pole.
The
Yeah,
person's
so I don't know
this
why
King Cool nigga
this thing.
don't request to speak in my space. Fuck off, man. Don't get involved in my space, dude. Piss off. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Okay, so that's it. We're just looking at them from free practice, FP2, 1 or 2, and we say, oh, yes, granted, the car is good, but I don't think that we truly know where that car will end up at the end of the day. And that's why I still believe that Mercedes have a thing or two up, maybe not on Red Bull and Ferrari at the moment, but I don't. That third position, I think they have a car that can compete in that space. At the end of the day.
Like
They're not that far
everyone
behind.
seems to think Mercedes don't what they don't they probably didn't do their homework in designing
Yeah,
the car. You don't. I really don't know what to say.
you
I
can
mean, look,
you can spend that level of money and be careless with it, especially after last year where you have opportunity to really look at that card, see what was wrong with it, and then make corrections to it. And to their credit, they actually make corrections. If they didn't, that car would still be purposely right now. So if you are able to eliminate that from the last year's car, that's a positive. But it therefore means that there were actually fundamental issues with the car that was outside of purposing, but it was masked for every other person because we thought purposing was the all and
well,
be all that was wrong with
they did say
Mercedes.
that last year that they thought
Mhm.
porpoising was their issue. Once they fixed it was in
Exactly.
Spain, then something else
Yeah.
popped up, and then they fixed
Popped up.
something,
Yeah.
and then
Mm.
something else popped up. So
Another
it
thing came
was
up
like
again. Yes. Yeah.
porpoising
The domino
just hit
effect. Yeah.
one
Something
thing
happening
when there was multiple
next.
things there. Look,
Yeah.
like I said at the beginning, I can understand people's frustrations because expectations of Mercedes is that they come out, they should be produce championship winning cars year
Yeah.
after year after year, but expectations and reality don't always meet.
Yeah. That is how we come together. Yeah.
It's not always
Sometimes.
gonna
Yeah.
your
It's
expectations will
not a direct
not
line.
always be met, and like exactly that's it. It's not a direct line from the
Yeah.
bottom to the top. You're gonna have difficult moments. They're having those difficult moments, and they have to deal with those difficult moments, and it's even more difficult for them because it's in an era whereby you're restricted in so many ways. So they're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah. Exactly. There you are restricted in that. It's unfortunate.
Yeah,
Well, let's hope it was a it was
it is what it is. And as you
it was a
said,
win.
majority of this frustration, I think 99.9% of it is tied to what happened in Abu Dhabi 21.
Absolutely. For me, that is where my frustration is coming from.
If that
I can
situation
say
did
that.
not occur, no one
Oh
would give a
God,
shit
I
if Lewis
I
don't
would be
win for the
watching
remainder
Mercedes and
5 years of
smiling
his
and saying,
career.
okay, yeah, exactly. It wasn't going to be anything.
So, you know. Um, Matt, what's up? I saw you come in early and then you drop out, you come back in. What's happening?
Steve,
All right, he's not saying. Gary, what's up?
I think his mic is
Mike's
muted.
muted.
So yeah.
What's up, Gary?
I also think we need to add a little bit of context to how Mercedes wound up here to begin with. Like from the W9 to about the W12, the FIA made a specific effort to develop regulations that went away from all of Mercedes' strengths. So I'm not surprised that they are currently dealing with a car that's not ready to fight at the front. They have to learn new skills regarding how they're going to design their car because their previous concepts were regulated out of the sport. So,
Yeah, I agree.
you know what I'm saying? It almost would be like, they once the W11 hit and they said, okay, we're going to get rid of DAS. That was like really the last true ingenious thing that Mercedes brought to the grid that no one else had really thought about yet. From there on out, it went to they leaned into high rate cars and then they leaned into ground effects. Two things that Red Bull had down pat. Adrian Newey, to my understanding, is the only aerodynamicist still left from that period.
Well, actually, he was he really from that period? Because, like I said, when
Well, at least he has the
Necessarily the
background
lead,
knowledge.
but he
Yeah,
did have the background
yeah,
knowledge. He was
well,
yeah.
around.
Background
his
knowledge is
thesis in university was on ground effects. So
yeah.
even if he
No.
was, because he didn't actually design a ground effects Formula One car until last year.
But
So
if you
even
have
yeah,
But if
a
Mercedes
statistics
doesn't
volume
even
to
have
work with,
that, or if Alpine
yeah,
don't even have that, you're already on the back nine. And I can say, so while my background wasn't in racing, I do have a background in designing aircraft. For 10 years of my life, I designed unmanned drones that the U.S. military uses. So I understand how all of that is tied together. And that's why last year, I think I came on here and said the W-13, when you apply all of its concepts together, it is insufficient. It's not just the side pods. It's not just the floor. It's not just the suspension. It's how everything comes together. It is at a deficiency. It is almost like comparing an F-16 to an F-22. The RB-1819 is that F-22. Its systems work at a higher capacity than anything the W-13 or 14 can do right now.
True.
And then the thing about, I think the ROB 10B or whatever the number was, it was already a good car, so it's easy to move from there to the next level because all Red Bull needed to just do was polish that car, add some bells and whistles, and send it out again to me.
Wasn't the
So
R
that
eighteen?
car was already good.
Wasn't the RB
Yeah,
18B
and
not the? What was the 2021 car or 16B? Is it 16B? Something like that.
I don't even
I
remember
don't know.
how
Yeah. Anyway.
the nomenclature was. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's it. I can see why they going the upward trajectory for Red Bull is easy because if your previous year car is good, you can only just go higher, not backward, unless you're just a bunch of dog.
Winning in sport is cyclical. Is it cyclical? Is the word?
It's cyclical, yeah.
Is the word? So
It goes around. It's
you have
cycle.
periods where you're going to be winning, and you're going to have periods you're not. Maybe this is Mercedes'
But
period.
then
I think where the issue
I
comes
think
in is there's also this added level of unfairness that is reverberating through the
yeah.
sport. Whether it's Abu Dhabi or the floor situation or the cost cap, if that was any other team, they would have been disqualified from the championship. But as I told you last year, I believe F1 and the FIA have made a specific, like they have made it very intentional that Red Bull is going to be their flag bearer moving forward. For whatever reason, maybe they don't
Yeah,
like Toto,
they just want
you know.
they want to stop Mercedes from winning. That domination they felt was bringing the game, the sports into some gray area where they were not getting people watching it, so they needed a different championship, and that's
Maybe
I
just
saw
easy.
some.
But it's
a
okay.
little bit, and
It's not a
maybe
bad
it's
thing to change regulation. Everybody starts on the same plate again, but it's unfortunate that when I say we, Mercedes has not mastered the grand effect design of a
I
car.
saw
So
someone tweet something the other day that they've not released the viewing figures for 2022 yet.
okay, the viewership figure.
And I don't think they released the figures for 2021 either. Because it'd be
in
interesting to
their
see
best
what the viewing
interest because
figure.
I guarantee you there was a lot of
2021 would be
like
really,
fair
really high
weather
because
Lewis or Mercedes fans that probably just stopped watching last year. I guarantee you. So viewership is not going to be up. But I think there is a big disconnect and a big dislike between maybe not necessarily the racing team Mercedes, but between Formula One and the company Mercedes, the company Daimler. I know there were years where they weren't sure about the commitment. Daimler's board went through lots of changes on the corporate side. So maybe that's why they've leaned into Red Bull because Red Bull is all in. Maybe, there's still some remnants of Bernie's old leadership that are just no matter what, wherever Lewis is,
Don't
that
mention that old fossil's name, man. He should be rotting in the grave somewhere. I still don't understand how he's still alive.
oh god, the
Honestly,
guy he has no self awareness at all.
right is this right now. Like if you look at every other dynasty across sports, even ones that have been questionable, whether if you want to look at like the Patriots, there has never been a situation where the league and a team have been in cohorts more than F1, FIA, and Red Bull.
sorry, I didn't hear that properly.
Yeah, your speaker is mocked up.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. I was saying if you look across sports, you look at all of like the major dynasties that have had any kind of conspiracies or things that look like they're below board, there's always like a distance between that team and the league where there's some tension there. This is the first time I've seen in my adult history of watching sports where it seems like the team that has questionable ethics has gotten beyond favoritism shown to them by the league and the regulators, right? Like FIFA and UEFA can't stop coming after Manchester City. Like they are going to get City on financial fair play. They are going to plant. They've planted their flag on that, and they're going to die on it, no matter what, no matter if it's right or wrong. They don't care. They're coming after City. That never seems to
Well,
be the case
that's
with Red
then
Bull.
for if that is the direction FIA or Formula One is going, that's dangerous because Mercedes supply a lot of teams with engines on that grid. You can't just all of a sudden be
Why do
against
you
a
think
team
it's
that supplies
important
half
that they
the grid.
want
Yeah.
more manufacturers in on the engine building process? They want to squeeze Mercedes out of that business. You don't think they're encouraging these teams to line back up with Honda? I mean, that's another thing that I forgot to mention. The preferential treatment that they got regarding the engine regulations, like, have also given them an unfair advantage. So they've had an unfair spinning, regulations, engine, floor, and and sporting rigs as well. Like, how many times has Max done something that he should have been disqualified from? Like Jeddah, like, So it's like,
There was a, honestly, I think for me, I think we've already moved beyond that. The we already know that the reason why the regulation was changed was because they wanted to stop Mercedes. Even the regulations that were happening in season when Mercedes was dominating was to stop them until they finally
Well, I mean,
came to
they tried it with
one that
they
really,
tried
really
it
stopped them.
they tried it with 2017, 2019,
Yeah,
and
2019,
20,
2021, 2021.
2021,
Yeah,
and it didn't really
yes,
work.
2021. Yeah,
So
because 2021 they actually decided they want to basically clip
because
for
each
Formula One to come out and say no, we have to
missing that
reduce the
one,
downforce.
but each time though, it was missing that one ingredient that actually could stop Mercedes, and that was budget. You can introduce regulations.
that's true.
Think about it. Think about all those championships. Mercedes cars would always kick on later in the year. Like we would start every season thinking this was Ferrari's year. Vettel was going to win the championship, and then by the time you get to Silverstone, it's not even a competition anymore. But these regulations was the first time where they took the one thing Mercedes could do to fix any kind of deficiencies against the regulation, and that was spending.
Yeah, because I think the outs they spent more than everyone per year for about I think it was from probably 2019 onwards or something like that.
Who
Mercedes.
who?
Yeah, they
Yes,
were on
yes.
average probably spend probably on average like 10 to 20 mil more than I think it
Yeah,
was Red Bull. I saw the numbers a while back, but it was on average probably about 10, 20 million more they could spend. But
well done.
look,
Yeah, but we're still within the budget cap
and it's
basically.
kind of fun, and it's kind of
Pretty
I
funny.
important.
Hold on, it's kind of funny because in the early 2000s, 2010 period, there was
mm,
you remember FOTA, right? Formula One Team Association. They came up with they
yeah,
had a agreement about in terms of spending, and they kind of like capped it similar to a budget cap, and I think they had capped it something like 200 million. And I don't know what Bernie went to each one of those teams and offer them individual deals, and they basically just
yeah.
fucked off with it.
Uh,
And I
They
think
just
Mercedes were the only
broke
team that
to pieces.
adhered to it, and they realized, yeah, this isn't going to work. And remember, 2013, was it? I think there was a Beyond the Grid interview about it. I think it was with what's his name, Andy Cowell and somebody else, and I think
I
Brock.
said this guy.
Yeah, and they were talking about that when they went to the Mercedes board and said, "Look, if you want to win, you're gonna have to release some more money. We're gonna need more money." And the car they
Hmm.
produced, what was it, 2013 car, the W05, I think it was, or the W04. The W4 was you saw how good that car was, or quickly that car climbed up the grid. It was because that was the first year that Mercedes really let go of the purse strings and allowed them to spend.
Spain,
So,
yeah.
and given that, and not only that, given the might of Mercedes itself, the company, all the resources that they had, add that into the whole mixture, you could see why they basically became successful. So in some ways, I can see what Gary means, where they say, well, if you're going to clip them, you can put all of these restrictions in, but if you allow them to still spend what they're spending, you're not gonna stop them, because they can just it's a matter of, when you get yourself into trouble, what you do, you spend your way out of trouble if you have the money. That's what most teams do, and they can't do that now. So they're gonna have to be ingenious about it, find different ways. They have
find other ways.
Look,
Find
they climbed to the top together as a team. They're now finding themselves falling down the hill. They're gonna have
having
to
to
dig
dig
themselves.
on the ground.
They're gonna have to dig themselves out of that hole. I get it. I'm a Lewis fan.
How do you motivate yourself?
I'm one
for
of the
that?
biggest Lewis fans out there. So it hurts me at the same time seeing them struggle. But it's the name of the game. This is what sports is all about. Because I guarantee you, you're gonna feel. I don't know if you will agree with this. Most people would agree with this, but I guarantee you, if Lewis was to win a race this year in one of the, if the W14 is still crap and he wins a race, you take more pleasure from this race win than you probably did any of the 103 he previously won. Because you realize what it took.
Do you remember in testing when he went purple? I told you I was screaming like I haven't seen purple in a long time for Lewis.
Last year we were celebrating him getting a podium. So imagine if he was to win a race in one of these guys. You're gonna feel more pleasure in this win than you do than the other 103, because you realize that, you know what it took just to win that one. And again, what we're seeing now, it shows you how difficult Formula One is as a sport.
It is difficult.
It's not an easy sport. It's easy to sit here and think, why not just go and copy the Red Bull concept? That's not no.
It's not a solution.
Aston copying the Red Bull concept and moving up to P3 or P4 in the championship, that's good for them.
For Mercedes can't do that.
Mercedes copying the Red Bull concept and not winning doesn't do anything for them, because they still haven't won. Their goal is to win, not to copy or finish P3 or P2. What's the point? I might as well just stick with what I have until
of course, that was giving us P3 before.
Go down our own path. Follow. This is the road we're plowing. We're going to keep plowing that road until we get to where we're going. Because it's like copying the smart kids in math class homework, but you still end up getting 50% and he's getting 100%, and you're like, copy your homework exactly.
Yep. It's so ideally, which tire do you think? What tire do you think this race? Because that soft was useless in that racing. So are you thinking that they're going to start on soft?
Well, looking at what the Ferrari, the Red Bull and the Astons were doing on it, even though they were doing what they did, like 12 laps, I think they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, because it's one thing to do this when
on half tank of fuel and then think, but on the full
and
tank,
not in the actual race condition, where you actually racing someone breathing down your neck
defending,
and all of that.
Attacking.
It's a different thing. I don't know. I don't know. They've not used the hard tires. They probably won't use the hard tires, because the hard tires is probably harder than diamond. So I don't know. I don't know.
That's but because the only thing if we are not on pace, then we can only go strategy wise and do something different.
Which is what they did
because
last
we are not. So we're not racing.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just running our own race. Let Ferrari and Red Bull kill themselves with Aston Martin probably. So we just find a way to do a different strategy and then hope.
Look, man, it's the season is 9 months long. It's 23 races. You're not going to win the championship with one bad race or lose it with one bad race. Last year, Max DNF'd in 2 out of the first 3 races. He won the championship.
The first 2 races, yes.
How many points he won it by? Over 100 points.
I don't even remember. It was so wide
points. Yes. Will Mercedes win the championship? I don't think so.
That they need.
Huh?
I do think that they need a major change to the team. The reason I say that, so as a project program manager, the one thing, so there's 3 competing things when dealing with a project, right? Budget, scope, and time.
I think your microphone is mocked up.
You're covering your mic, Jerry.
Yes. You
Probably
can go
Oh,
back and
probably
come
While
back
covering his
again.
mic.
Yeah.
while he gets his mic sorted, I just want to
Yeah.
play the
Please
devil's
log it.
advocate for a bit. What is
Yeah.
wrong with copying Red Bull's concepts, given the fact that they took a lot of the engineers, I think for the
From where?
2022 season
Took what engineers?
Who took
from
the engineers?
Mercedes?
What engineers did they take?
Which engineers? I
Technical,
don't think did
technical
they take it?
experts.
Which technical expert? The
Who?
highest ranking
No,
person, the highest ranking person they got from Mercedes
was
was
it
Ben
was the engine?
Hodgkinson, and he was head of mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why can't we also poach from Red Bull?
But who says they don't poach people
Because
from Red Bull?
the difference is this, Temba. I think it's different because when you are at the top, people try to poke you because you are winning and they want to get your team. But it's not this. That was Mercedes at the top at the time, and everybody wanted to get
Hey
a
guys, can you hear me
handle
now?
on who was it.
Yeah, we
So
can
it's
hear.
easy
Hold on
that
there.
way. Yeah, but you can
But
mute your mic, please.
but
So the point is, it was Mercedes were winning, so they can't be copying Red Bull at the time. But now the other way around. Now I don't think
here's the
copying Red
problem.
Bull.
Here's the problem with saying they should copy Red Bull, right?
Yeah,
You're seeing that what you're talking about copying the external, the outer layer.
yeah,
You don't
discipled.
actually
Yes,
the secret to the
the
Red Bull is
internal
probably
workings.
what's inside and what's underneath, which you cannot
The
see.
car. Yes.
So
You can see
you
and
can go
copy.
ahead and put on the exact same side pods on the Mercedes. It probably still be as slow.
Or
So
slower than this.
or
Yeah,
even slower. So the idea of
yeah.
yeah, okay, let's go ahead and copy. The solution is copy Red Bull. Does it really make any sense?
Reverse engineering doesn't just
And
work that
again,
way. You have to have the full car
and
to be
again,
able to.
all three
Yeah.
concepts won a race last year. So it tells you, okay, the Mercedes concept at present, it's not delivering what it's delivering, but you saw from last year that it has the potential. It's a matter of they need to figure out what's causing it not to
What is
show its
not
percent, but
correlating with
not
something is not correlating for
show
them.
its potential.
Yes.
It's I think that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to. Look, again, they're in this hole. They have to dig themselves out of it. It's not just going. The hole's not just going to miraculously disappear and they find themselves back. That's not how it works. They're going to have to
Can
dig.
I jump back in here now? Because
Yeah, yeah.
I got one last point
Go on.
that I think is really key. So like when you're a project manager or leader and you have an unlimited budget, it is really hard for you to still deliver to that same standard and quality level performance when you're focusing now with tight constraints that you've never dealt with before. Mercedes need to do something differently at the top. I'm not saying they need to fire somebody, but they need to bring in some technical expertise that do not have a deep history in unlimited budgets and unlimited resources. They need somebody that can help them see those risks that for the last 8 years they never had to look for. And I'm saying this from experience. One of the hard, like last year, I developed some really cool things for my company with no budget, right? I could have whatever engineers I wanted, however much time, we got it out the door. This year, due to, how economies are going, I'm under a strict budget. And it is probably the hardest time I've had in the last 20 years of my professional career. Because for the last 19 years, I've never had to worry about budget. I've never had to worry about staff. And so I think look at that. And it sounds like he has when he talked about studying teams that were, historical dynasties that had
Oh, your mic's
Your
your
mic,
mic's doing it
your mic
again,
is not
Gary.
good. I think you have to yeah, we're not hearing you at all. It's breaking up, so just take that.
All right. Yeah, sure. What's up?
Hi, can you hear
What's happening,
me?
man? You good? Yeah, we can hear you. You good?
Yeah, I'm alright,
Quick
mate.
stop.
I'm alright. I'm alright. How are you doing?
Yeah,
Season's back.
I'm good,
No,
man. I'm surprised. Don't don't tell me you've not joined the band the doom and gloom wagon, is
the
it?
bandwagon of doom and gloom.
No, look, I think expectation management is always important. I think if you came into this expecting Mercedes to be at the front, then obviously, or for us to be, extremely close, I think that would have been maybe not a good way.
Realistic.
Yeah, I don't think that was realistic. I think all I've ever said was we need a stable car so that we can develop. You have to remember, I feel like we're like 6 months behind everyone else in understanding the regulations, and understanding their cars. So, yeah, like I don't think that stops the disappointment. Like, it's never nice not looking like you're going to fight, but also, it's FP2. We don't know, hopefully they find something overnight. Sometimes they do seem to find a little something overnight that can work
Hmm.
in, work in qualifying the next day, and then in the, in qualifying, and then the race. So, yeah, I think I'm just happy to have the sport back, and then for us to have actual stuff to talk about rather than conjecture, although it is a little bit of conjecture at the moment, you know just happy to have the sport back. But obviously, it's a bit. I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit mad still. But yeah. I think you just got to take the long and short of it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Thanks, Neil. So
Anna,
that's me.
Anna, ma'am, is next. In case you wanted to speak, someone, her hand is up. Since.
Yeah. Hello.
Come here.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
While we were on the topic of copying the external and internal designs of Red Bull,
I,
does an Aston Martin use our suspension design?
yeah, yes, they do.
So
So
even with that, they've been able to put up somehow second and a half or a 2 second gap over the wing and there.
but why you think their performance is about the suspension? Again, is about suspension. It could be anything.
I mean, with Merck's suspension design and the Red Bull
I
philosophy
can't.
of aero.
I can't hear you. Sorry,
I
I'm
can't
up
even
a
hear what you're
bit.
saying clearly. I think.
Yeah.
Are you saying
Oh,
who did they
sorry.
pull the 2 seconds though?
Jordan, go on.
Yeah, hi guys. So yeah, it is kind of doom and gloom, and I guess for me it's a bit too early for that. Obviously, the science is not good, but maybe a bit is an understatement. But I think for me, if they do this upgrade package where they're talking about the side pods, and we're still not in the fight, then I think for me I've had enough, because they've already made that statement several times last year, like, oh, then we'll be in the fight, oh, then we'll be in the fight. You say that so many times before it becomes just a bit of a gimmick, and you start to lose faith in the
Did they
team.
ever send? But last year, did they ever really say they were? If they did this, they were going to be in the fight. They pretty much kind of wrote last season off.
Well, I think it was early in the season. They said like
Early in the season,
Barcelona.
yes. Yeah, early in the season,
Mhm.
they said we're going to be in it. I think later part of the season,
So
they realized that was a bridge too
So
far. They had
they said that again for this year, for either Baku or Imola or whenever that upgrade's going to be, probably one of those two races. So we'll see then. But for me, if they say that again, then they just got to admit they haven't got a clue how these ground effect regulations work. And I agree they would need to bring someone else in, because the only way
who's that?
you can really.
Who would be your
Well, I don't know. I mean,
bring in?
there's so many people obviously in Formula One that you hear all the big names, but there's so many people who go under the radar as well that have expertise in areas that we don't know about. And yeah, I think in this era of cost cap, it's about less about what Mercedes have been known for in the past, is because they had such a big organisation with such good tools. They could brute force the best solution all the time, as in they just run the wind tunnel constantly, try absolutely everything until they get to the right place to be. Whereas now you've got to be a bit more intuitive. I think a Red Bull or Marco kind of alluded to that, saying that, well, only things that we know are going to work actually go into the wind tunnel. So they're more efficient in that way. So you have to go on expertise. And it looks like basically anyone who worked with Adrian Newey has that expertise, because Dan Fallows has jumped ship and seems to have had a big impact already. To me, that doesn't speak very good of the regulations that only two people, both of them known for
But Peter
ground effect
Prodromou,
specialism, appear to be able to actually make a car that works.
Prodromou worked for
Yeah,
Adrian
but
Newey.
he moved before they started working on this ground effect. The rumor is that Fallows has moved a load of secrets over to Aston Martin about the design of this year's Red Bull, which would make sense. I mean, it certainly checks out.
You can see why they were fighting so hard to get him on that gardening leave.
When
Yeah,
did
exactly.
when did Gianfalo move to Red Bull? Oh, sorry, to Aston Martin.
I think it was last year.
Yeah,
he should have actually been starting this year.
Yes, because
if I
that
remember
car was
correctly.
supposed to come in 2021.
No,
It was
no,
because
he went. He left Red Bull, but I think they had actually had an agreement that he could have started. I think earlier Aston, and Red Bull took them to court to say no. They wanted him to go on the gardening leave, but
it wasn't actually the
lost.
first time. It wasn't actually the first time they blocked him from leaving Red Bull. So he tried to go to McLaren years ago, and Horner basically started a whole legal case against McLaren. He managed to scare McLaren into not signing him, but Aston Martin didn't fall for that. So clearly they think extremely highly of.
They think highly of him if they were fighting
Yeah.
that hard to make him. Also,
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that was probably a signing of best technical signing of the last few years for Aston Martin, and the results maybe already shown off. But
we don't know what the results are yet. It's still too early to make the assumption that what we've seen so far.
But based on
the
early results, you can say yes, that is bearing fruit.
If you know anything about Alonso, he loves a bit of a glory run. So I still think that Alonso removed.
No, it wasn't just Alonso. Even Stroll that came in today was still performing with that car. So it wasn't just Alonso.
Yeah. But still, I think Aston will. They're going to fall behind at least Red Bull by quite some distance tomorrow. I expect. Where they are compared to Ferrari and Mercedes, I don't know, but we've got to remember that Ferrari, I mean, it's early days again, but they've had probably the same day as Mercedes. It looks like they might have cocked up a lot as well, which again speaks to these regulations. Like, it seems you need to be a specialist in this one area, otherwise nobody else has got any clue what they're actually doing with them.
The top teams were struggling today. Even Mars was struggling with that car today. So maybe it's something in the tires.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, the Ferrari in particular looks so bad to drive. In the second year of the regulations, like
it was snapping.
How can you go backwards on the drivability of your car in a year? It's just, does anyone actually understand these regulations other than Adrian Newey?
Exactly.
I mean, these regulations were crap from day one anyway. So
oh yeah, they're absolutely.
I mean, they just wanted to change the parking order.
I mean, you pretty much knew it was screwed once they got rid of the actual suspension system.
It's 1980s technology, 1980s aero design, 1980s suspension. Slower cars by about 4 seconds from 2020. I mean, it's just, if you call Formula One the pinnacle of motorsport, they should not be using something that was discovered by accident in the 1980s.
That level of speed, yeah. Wow. Well,
right now, Jordan, this is what I know. Again, I keep saying it. We as Lewis and Mercedes fan, we're just gonna have to tough it out.
I am a Lewis fan first before Mercedes. So
you're gonna have to top it out. There's no other way. There's no shortcut to get to the top, unless it's nepotism.
So if they bring updates, for example, the side pod or something, and then we get whatever boost of performance we get for it, we'll take it.
These guys brought parts of the car last year at Silverstone. They didn't test,
and then we'll get the result. Yeah,
I still maintain the car they're using now is what they would have
the baseline car.
The baseline. If we had the 6 days testing like normal, this would have been the car they used for the first 3 days of testing. And what they've got in the wind tunnel would have been what they would have gone racing with this weekend.
Yeah.
But I guess they're willing to sacrifice a few races to give it more time, because the more you run this car, the more you're going to learn.
You understand the car better, yes.
And by doing that, it helps develop what you have in the wind.
This is why
I'm no aerodynamicist.
This is why I mean, Merck have not explained. They keep saying it. They're not explained why they've chosen to change the side pod design 5 races or whatever into the season, and they've not actually started with, the car that they clearly have the forward plans based on. There hasn't been actually an explanation for that, and it just feels like
strange. I think I think I think it's strange, but what I think is whatever Mercedes did in testing was to simulate the exact same situation they had with W13 and see if the
Yeah,
car will still purpose. So the rear wing, for example, that huge rear wing, that's not the rear wing that was supposed to be on that car in testing. It was something else. So they actually wanted to see if we put everything that was at least some of the things that were on W13 and put it on this car. Granted, I will change suspension geometry and other stuff. Will it purpose? If that is not there anymore, then that tells them, okay, our tools and our data are working. Then we can start bringing other things. And really, when the car hit the track, I think everyone at Mercedes garage was holding their breaths when that car hit the track because we were looking for if it purpose. It didn't. So for I think Toto came out and said purposing has been eliminated. I think for him to actually say that it means they were looking out for that particular phenomenon from that car, and that was where I think they decided, okay, if this is what is happening with this car, we can then go with performance with other parts that they
Let
have to
me.
add. Yeah.
We saw the speed data, the straight line speed data. They put on the medium that new wing. They went from being what 10, 12 kilometers per hour slower in testing to actually being what 2 kilometers slower than the fastest than the Red Bull in the
I
straight line.
didn't actually check that. Yeah. So,
Uh,
which
so,
means
so, and they didn't. Again, there was no sign of porpoising, but I don't. Maybe it's the track. It's
yeah,
just the
you said
track
that
well,
that's
he
before.
did
giving
allude to
that's
that a
giving
little bit
this.
already.
Uh,
That
No, but
Bahrain's an
this
outlier.
track has always been good to Mercedes, for example.
has it?
I don't. It has been,
Um,
yeah, in a way,
I
it
think
has
it's been
been.
mixed. I mean, if you think about the 2019 car, that was one of the best Mercs they've ever produced. But Ferrari had the pace in that weekend.
Actually, spanked them that weekend.
It suits. I think it suits power. Um,
Hmm.
it's more of a power track. But the
Is it
problem
Yeah,
though?
is, like, Ferrari's got
it
all the pads,
consumes a lot
and they're
of
struggling as well.
fuel.
Is
I
it
think
more of a power
so.
track than Monza?
But power and traction. No, not Monza. I guess. And it seems like Mercedes now are
Is
losing
it
out
not?
in the
Is it not?
traction
I
zone.
think did I not read Lewis or someone saying that this is the track that consumed the highest level of fuel in Formula One cars, basically. That means it's
Is
a
it?
power
Maybe
track.
that is true, actually.
Yes,
I
that's
don't
what he
know.
said.
But yeah. So power, two things: power and really strong braking.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I reckon, yeah.
and I guess they seemed pretty quick on the straights today, so they're obviously losing out in the corners. I haven't looked too
No, the
much at
corners.
the
If you see the
GTS
time,
racing
it
rankings,
was
but
in the corners. In the
yeah,
straight,
yeah,
Lewis is
yeah.
down a tenth in the corner. He loses 4 tenths, for example. So that's a huge number to lose in the corner, and
I mean,
it means
yeah.
the
So
the drivability in the corners are really really poor. Otherwise, I don't. But what the irony is that the W13 was actually good for a while in the corners, weren't it? Weren't it? I think that car was
hmm
good in the corner to an extent. You could see it was the straight that it was bouncing like a kangaroo, but in the corners, I remember Norris saying that Mercedes actually had one of the fastest car in low to medium speed corners, basically, and that was true on the W13. But I don't know with this car, it's Lewis was fighting with it throughout. You could see
This
he would
car,
be he would hesitate to actually go into a corner with his speed.
this car is
The-
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, man.
yeah,
Right now, which one is? I don't know. I don't know. Pick which.
because
We don't know which one is we're gonna see on any given
on
day of the week.
on any given
So
day. No, 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 no. It's and oh god, the car Lewis usually don't hesitate when he's. I remember the W11. If Lewis comes to a corner, you will hold your breath because he will take you with that level of speed. But this
Lewis
car,
is
he's
Lewis'
slowing
statement
down.
today. Lewis'
Hmm.
statement right now. He's a bit just. I think once he'll come around and he's gonna give it. He's a bit pissed off now, but he's
Yeah,
gonna
he's
come
pissed
around
off
back
yeah,
with his
yeah,
kumbaya and like we're a team.
yeah.
We win and we lose together and all of that state. So right now it's like
But
Lewis,
no,
get out
this one
your
that he
system,
said.
get out your system from now because it can't get any worse. It can only get better. Well,
Yeah, it
it
can
could
only
get
get better.
worse.
This, yes,
It could get
I
worse
think
if they end up behind a Williams, but I
no,
don't
no,
see that.
we can't end up behind a
I
Williams.
mean,
So
I don't even think there's no way Alonso in Aston Martin is 6 tenths who 6 tenths faster than them. No, sorry, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying
No.
that. I don't
Yeah, I
buy. You're
think
no,
I
right.
think they're
no,
going
no,
to be
no, no.
on similar pace. I
Was it
think we might see
was it Sam?
the
Sam
three
was saying that they
teams,
had
Mercedes, Ferrari. fight each
lower
other.
fuel on the car and all that stuff. So I think, like Jordan said, the glory ride kind of,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, that's
Because you said something to me, Kingsley. I'm gonna come to you, Gary and Baxley, right after this. You said something to me about um when they were doing the race, saying that Toto. What am I saying, Toto? Bono.
Bono.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying Toto because he's supposed to send me that Mercedes paycheck because you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
The one you
Bono was
defend them
telling him
every
about
day.
Bono.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna yeah, that's my team and that's my driver, so
yeah,
I'm gonna defend them. If you want to fight me, fight me. I don't. You're not gonna win though, but I don't care. But the point is, you were saying about Bono was relaying times, and he was more comparing Lewis's time to that of
it
Max
was mass.
and
It was
not
basically mass,
Alonso,
mass, mass.
which
Yes,
is
they
kind
just
of an
ignore.
odd
I'm saying
thing.
Alonso's time. Alonso is matching mass and even passing sometimes. And then he's talking about Lewis. Every time he's talking to Lewis, either the car is behind you 10 seconds or 3 seconds, or this is what Mass is doing right now. And he got all of his time in so and so sector. I'm like, why is this guy talking about Mass? Mass, what about Alonso and the rest? Well, obviously, like I said, they probably have something they
Or
know.
did he? Or
Because
did he tell him? Or did he tell him he didn't want to hear any lap times about?
I just no, he didn't say, but maybe he was taking it. You know what? Actually, I thought about that because I remember it was last year when Bono was telling Luis about something. He said, "I don't want to hear by that. Tell me what Mars is doing." So maybe Bono took a cue from that and said, "Okay, it's Mars for the way." I don't think that was it because they probably have one or two things under their sleeve that we will see tomorrow. Hopefully, otherwise it's going to be a
they're cool.
long season
It's
and
going to be a long and enjoyable season. We're
and
gonna have. It's going to be like it's going to be an up and down season. You're going to have to enjoy the ride. You have to take
yeah.
the good with the bad. You can't always have filet mignon every day of the week for dinner. Sometimes you have to eat some scraps. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I
It
agree.
makes the filet mignon taste that much better. Um, what's that?
Basti.
Gary, and
Okay.
then Baxi. I hope Gary has fixed his mic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fixed.
If you don't fix
Um,
your mic, you're gonna pay us.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
go
it,
on.
it actually was my headset, but I think one silver lining might be we may not be stuck with these regs for long. If you look at the complaints and the vertical oscillations that the drivers are experiencing, I don't think F1 and the FIA want to go through what the NFL went through regarding concussions. I don't think they want to be cutting checks to drivers 20 years from now. Granted, it'll be a much smaller number because there's not thousands of, F1 drivers, but it's bad press, and you don't really want to have to deal with that when you don't have to, when you can introduce things like active suspension and stuff like that. So maybe these regs don't make it all the way to 2026. At least I'm
Oh,
hoping they
they
don't.
will. They
No,
will.
they are going to stay
They
to
will.
2026.
They will.
There's no change in that
Because
anymore. Yeah.
they made what's the word? They make God, what's the word I'm trying to they they made a contingency. They formed a contingency for this purposing by raising the floor that extra 50
50
millimeters.
millimeters. Yeah,
But
that's
but
it.
even if you raise it 50 millimeters, the teams are going to think, well, we can run it an extra 15 millimeters lower.
Well,
Still,
don't you
so
think
you
though
put
that
it, you
that's
bring it
just
up
like
15, and they're going to think, well, we can raise it 30 millimeters just to
Yeah.
just
it,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
to actually do that is just a half measure to work around the fact that your regulations are crap. Like ground effect has this inherent flaw, and it's always known to have this problem with drivability. Active
And one of the
suspension
reasons
might
why
solve it, but I feel like that's not a solution because they're saying they want to make the sport more simple, and active suspension is overly
Expensive to
complex and
and
design.
expensive. Yeah.
why you think they banned
So,
ground
so
effects in
the
the first
solution is
place?
simply to go back to regulations we had before, because they
Why
were
you think they
actually
banned
decent.
ground effects? Ground effects was banned on the
It
grounds
was
of
dangerous.
danger. It was
Yeah, it was
dangerous.
Yeah,
dangerous.
It
exactly.
wasn't because of anything. It was literally dangerous, so they banned it. And last year, I think it was Anthony Davis who made the argument that if you're going to go ground effects, why didn't you go active suspension? Because
Yeah.
active suspension would have alleviated the problem of porpoising for everybody, and you could have simply gone with a standard system, give it to
Yeah.
all the teams, and
Yeah,
they
like
can
a
tune
spec
it.
system. Yeah. Yeah.
Similar
Like
to
the
with
fuel.
the McLaren, McLaren produces the ECU for all the teams. Red Bull produced that that thing at the front of the wheels, that wing
Yeah.
thing. They produce that, so they could have gone with active suspension and standard one and said, okay, here it is.
Standardize it
Teams
for every.
exactly, and teams just have to tune it to how they want to run their car. Or better yet, gone ground effects and leave the suspension system as they were in 2020 2021. That's all
Yeah.
they had to do. But again, this argument about and the thing, this rule was fueled by this argument that Formula One drivers have it too easy. They want to see the drivers, you know,
Wrestle with
looking
the
like they're
car. Yes.
working,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, we're not watching on board the whole entire race. So why do I need to see if a driver is
He's struggling with the steroids
crossing
or
up
what?
and all of it? Like, no, I don't give a damn about that. And does that make the sport more exciting? Not
It
really.
doesn't.
And
It
if you
doesn't.
look at
Nobody.
it,
Yeah.
and if you look at it now, and let's be honest, if you compare racing now, what drivers have to do now compared to those back in the so-called good old days,
This is
drivers have
harder.
this is
This
harder
is harder.
because
Do you know
back
how
then
many
you only had
inputs you
two
have to
buttons
do
on
with
your
the steroids? Yeah.
you only had
This
two
is
buttons on
harder.
your steering wheel, a clutch
Yeah.
pedal, and a gear stick. Now you have to literally be a genius to understand the
Every
amount of
corner you have to set the
information.
brake bias at every corner. Do you know how
It's not
you
just that,
need
but it's
a
the amount of
level of
information
concentration
you
to
have
do
to
that? Yeah.
the
A lot of
amount of
information.
information you have
Yeah.
to digest just to
Yeah.
drive one of these things. And it's like, I don't need to see, I don't, this idea that we need to see. And, Brunder was one of the chief vocalists about this because he talked about, drivers come out of the car and they didn't look like they actually raced or anything.
Mm.
Dude, they're not beer drinking, chain smoking womanizers like Jameson back in the day. These guys are far more fitter. These are
It's a
different
different era,
animals. No,
different time. Yeah.
you put these guys in the MP44, they'd spank Ayrton
This
Senna.
funk, yeah.
You put Senna in one of these guys, he'd
You
still
would
get
find it
spanked.
difficult. Yeah, you'll find it
I
difficult.
So the
mean, the
idea,
reality is,
Mhm.
the only thing that will make the sport more actually exciting and interesting is if there's a competition at the front. Forget the midfield. Nobody actually cares about the midfield.
True.
Forget
Yeah.
more overtaking. The overtaking is way too easy now, and all DRS assisted. Who gives a fuck, really? I mean, it's just a slower car overtaking a faster car.
And
The overtaking effect has not actually contributed anything in reality.
Kingsley, did we not debate
Nobody
this?
remembers.
That's what we said. Yeah.
He
Yes.
overtook him
Yeah.
on that straight. In
But
this
did we
race.
not
It's
debate
just-
this recently, Kingsley, where we said I think these regulations have made it's taken away a driver's skill.
Yeah. You said
It
it.
has removed a driver's skill because it's so easy now to just signal maneuver and pass them.
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, Alonso versus Lewis in Hungary 2021,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
The W12 was infinitely faster than the what was it, the Alpine, but
Yeah.
because of how the regulations were and who it made for exciting, Lewis had to work. He
worked for that
had to
overtake.
think.
Yeah.
He had to
And
think.
we had to
Okay,
make
how
multiple.
am I going to get?
Yeah.
So he had to plan his move. Now, if
Multiple
you
lap
see,
times.
if you think
saw,
about, one of the key advantages Lewis had over Bottas throughout that whole era was that he was so much better at being able to stay and stick with the car in dirty air. And there was a skill in that, in how you drive.
Exactly,
yeah.
skill.
That's been totally taken away by these cars. Now
So
it's
now
just a free fall.
it's a matter of if you have a car, because when you look at the max overtake, like again, I go back to Cota last year, he was 9/10 behind when he got onto that back straight. He passed Lewis before he even got into the braking zone. No,
Yeah.
you get that exact same situation into 2021. There's
It won't
no
happen.
way
That
he would have
move
made
is
that
not on.
pass.
That move is not on.
So
Yeah.
it's showed that this idea about cars being able to follow. Okay, so they're able to follow each other closely now. Okay, what next?
Exactly.
It's an easy pass. It's an easy pass for the car that's infinitely quicker.
Yeah.
It just makes it easy for them to pass. That's how I see it. And I don't think the regulation has actually improved the racing to the point that people are
They
saying.
are just trying to scream
It just
on that.
adjusts. What the regulation has done is just adjust the front three positions.
That's it. Yeah.
That's all it's done.
Which is what
The
it was
midfield,
designed for. Every other thing was a smoke. Yeah.
from P4 to P10 in the championship, it's still the exact same as it was and it will always be. For all the hype Aston Martin is getting now, Aston Martin will still be challenging for P4 in the championship this year. I can assure you. Their fight is to finish ahead of Alpine in the runners-up position from the top three.
And McLaren.
Aston Martin will not finish ahead of Mercedes in the championship. And I'm confident in saying that. So what we're seeing now is not what we're going to see come the end of come 9 months time from now. No.
I mean, if it was truly just about seeing who's the most talented driver, when you just put everybody in the same car.
No, it becomes a spec series. That's not.
But that's I mean.
But then it's really about the driver and the pit crew and the race strategy. It's not about what company has the best engineering resources, what company doesn't have a wind tunnel. Either that or you subsidize the teams at the back that don't have those resources, right? So, I mean, F1 is making billions. The FIA is not broke. Then you subsidize Williams till you get them there, or Haas. Because if not, like, truthfully, like those teams currently right now, yeah, Williams have the historical, the history, but they don't have a place on the grid. They might as well go race in F2. They will, unless 8 other teams all DNF, they're not going to win.
Yeah, but in a way,
it's early season hype. You're going to have someone has to hype, put them up their heads above the pulpit for a bit, but at some point they're going to have to pull it down. Anyway, let me give Baxter. We rambled on for a bit. I'll give you the floor.
Cheers, Dalos. Hey everyone. I hope we're all doing all right. Yeah, no, I was happy to keep waiting because I was interested in listening to you guys talking about this stuff. I mean, we've got to remember with these regs that we're year 2 into what is probably a 10-year project at least at the moment. First year of new regs, there's always going to be one team that aces it. I think with the last big change in 2014, we were lucky that we did have a title fight, even though it was an intra-team title fight. We were lucky because you had a compelling battle between 2 very good drivers, and there was the story of them being friends as kids and everything else. So that made Mercedes domination interesting, whereas last year it was just max all the way through.
Yeah.
I also think one thing that needs to be said is Aston Martin, I think, are benefiting, from the sliding scale CFD wind tunnel stuff. They finished P7 in the championship.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So they had a lot more wind tunnel time and a lot more CFD allocation than the teams in front of them. So clearly they've got a good idea and they've been able to get more tests in on it.
Yeah.
But where I think, so that element of the new regs, actually, if this Aston pace is real and they can sustain it over the course of maybe a season, half a season, who knows? F1's powers that be can point to Aston and go, look, they were 7th last year, and with our sliding scale, we've got them closer. We've helped to get them closer, potentially. What I would say about Aston is I think they need to consider not letting Lance drive the car, because the images of him being yanked out the car by his engineers is very worrying to see.
He couldn't even turn the steering in some points. Some places he couldn't turn the steering very well.
Left hand. He couldn't use his left hand to.
Yeah, he was using the other hand to turn. Yeah, which is dangerous.
They need to get they need to get Felipe Drugovich in the car. Absolutely, I think it's very brave of Lance to do it, but if he's not fit, just get him ready for Saudi and.
I don't think it's bravery. I think it's selfishness.
Stupidity.
Yeah,
exactly. Because didn't Alonso then come out this week and said that he raced most of the season with a broken bone in his hand or something like that, and he didn't tell anyone? Thinking,
I always take Alonso's words on the pitch of salt. I don't believe some of the things he says.
Yeah, I think going back to the stuff about the regs, though, I think what's interesting is that I think you can follow a lot better, but I think DRS is too powerful, and I think they need to tweak it or take it away entirely. It's all well and good being able to follow. I think the best example of last year was when Lewis was chasing down Ocon, in Japan, but because it was raining, they couldn't have DRS. So then he had to, he just had to stay behind and try and make the pass on his own skill. Now, if he'd had DRS, he would have blazed down past him, and it would have been all over.
Did he not actually have DRS, but he couldn't pass because I think he
There was
had
a
DRS.
train. No, it was raining. They didn't use
No,
DRS in.
yeah,
in
I
Yeah,
think
it was
Bahrain.
raining.
I'm sure.
It was
I'm
somewhere
sure they
else.
had DRS.
He may have had it in
No,
the last couple of laps, but
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't have. I don't think by that point his tyres would have been shot. So I think he wouldn't have been able to do it as effectively. But yeah, I mean, maybe they're talking about shortening the DRS zones, which may help. I don't know.
They said
But
it's
yeah,
been shortened for this track. It's been shortened by what, 80 meters or something like that. They said.
yeah, they
I heard
want
it's
if you
been
are using
shortened.
a DRS, both the driver with the DRS and the one that doesn't arrive at the braking zone at the same time, then you now leave it to the driver's skills to be able to navigate the corners and all that stuff. Which, in a way, is better than you just blew past with DRS even before you get to the
No,
braking
man, they
zone.
should just go back to the previous generations. They can't scrap this goddamn ground effect shit because I
Let's
don't
do
like
it. I'm
it.
in.
I think it's not done. Because remember they said ground effects was along with moving being able to follow closely was also to close the grid up, but
It
has the
hasn't
grid
do
really
that.
closed up?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, remember it's year. Well, we're now in year 2. Like last year was year 1, and somebody was always going to ace the stuff. Where Red Bull did it and Ferrari did it. But if after maybe 2, 3, 4 years, you've
Two,
still
three,
got the
four.
same status quo.
What? I'm going to watch this thing like this for the next 5 years?
I can't sit down and watch
I
Max
can't
win
even say
No,
that.
I get no, I get
I
what
shoot myself. That's no,
no, I
I
get
wouldn't
that,
go
but
that
like
far.
Aston, like, the first indication that perhaps it could work. These regs could work because they're making a step forward with the sliding scale stuff.
But we don't
Let's
know.
see if
But
any
we
up.
don't know what steps they've made as
But
well. Again, we're still in a situation whereby we haven't had the first
Yeah,
race. I think
we'll know more tomorrow.
I
and
think
on the
we'll
point
know
I
more
made
Yeah,
after
earlier,
5
tomorrow.
races.
on
I
the
think we
point I
know
made
more after
earlier,
5 races.
Aston Martin may just be an example that someone who knows Adrian Newey, worked with Adrian Newey, is the only one who understands the regulations, given that Dan Fellow apparently moved with all the secrets. So it may also be if nobody else makes the same step forward, it may also prove that these regulations are just overly complicated and
And
not a good thing
yesterday
because
I
nobody
tweeted.
understands them properly.
Yesterday I tweeted, will Martin Brundle then start complaining about the regulations and saying that
No,
someone needs to challenge Max?
he's not
Because
going to complain.
I distinctly remember from around 2019 and 20, he was constantly talking about, something needs to be done about the regulations and Mercedes needs to
Yeah.
get someone in there. Lewis needs to be challenged or whatnot. So is he going to say the same with Max just running off
Max
unchallenged
doesn't.
by
Max, at
anybody?
least Lewis had a competition within his
And
team.
not
Max
only that,
just
remember the
yeah.
FIA reacted to 2014 in 20 and changed the cars for 2017.
Yeah.
They didn't give it 4 years or 5. They literally,
No, they
I think it
just
was in
made the changes.
2015 or 20. I can't remember. I think it was in 2015. They said, "Well, we're going to change the cars for 2017," and I'm like, "You only just changed them a year ago. Are you going to
Yeah.
change them that quickly again?" Because why? Apparently, people were complaining about the racing.
Mercedes is sweating. Yeah.
One thing as well is that Ross Brawn made several points about if anyone does anything that gives them a big advantage, we'll just ban it straight away.
I
The
think he
only
was
time
just blowing hot air.
but the only time he's ever said that is when Mercedes unveiled their side pods
Exactly.
last year. Since then, we've not
Yeah.
heard anything about it. It's like,
In fact,
this no longer
didn't
applies.
didn't
It was very
Honor
convenient timing.
Honor actually protested the side pod before he even saw what he could do
Yes,
on
he
track.
did. And then they put up Red Bull put a statement that saying there was no truth to it. And I'm like, so the reporter's lying. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And it's not
Yes.
you know what happened that year as well? Pat Simmons,
Yeah. Pat Simon,
in
that
an
guy.
interview with Ted Kravitz, basically told everybody who developed the cooling system for Mercedes.
Yes.
And I'm
Give it
like,
up.
if Mercedes wanted anybody to know that information, granted, people might have known, but to actually tell the world on a live broadcast, this company X, I think they call it X Projects or X Space or something of the sort, or these are the guys that develop the cooling system for Mercedes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Mercedes submit technical documents on the grounds of confidentiality.
Yeah. And
right?
then Simmons killing the entire
How
world.
is Pat Simmons then going to tell the world that this is the company that developed their cooling system? Like
They were all triggered when they saw the debut 13. That's why it pains me that car didn't perform, because even before that car steps his foot on the track, everybody was they
I
already
think
alarmed. Yeah.
had it performed, they would have
Oh
banned a
god.
lot of shit on it.
They would
They
have
probably would
a
have
lot
banned
of
it. They
things
would
would
have
have been
said,
banned. Yes,
yeah, they would
the
have banned
side
a
pod
lot
would
of
have been
things.
banned. The mirrors would have been banned. They would tell you this is not the regulation, and every other thing that goes with it. Basically, they would
All right,
strip
hold
the
on.
car.
Who's this? This is the Fifth Wheel podcast. Hopefully, he's not going to have a hissy fit about Ricky Yada money again. What's up?
Well, it depends on whether or not you let me finish my point, but I do
It's
appreciate
the
you letting me
same guy
speak.
that left that in.
Yeah. Go on, let him go. Let him go. Go on, man.
What'd you say? I didn't hear you, man.
No, you were saying if he don't. Never mind. He just realized who you were.
Right. So sorry, I had a meeting come up right when I joined, so I couldn't hear what y'all been saying recently. But I was just curious what people's thoughts were about this whole like Lance Stroll situation with his wrists. Uh, I don't know. I know he passed his extraction test today, like I think all the drivers did. But I'm just curious, like what y'all think about him actually racing. I mean, I don't know why they're putting him in the car if he can't get out. I apologize
You
if that's
shouldn't be racing. You shouldn't be racing. It's not safe. At some point, you have to protect the drivers from themselves. And if it's not, if I saw the video, teams literally have to pull him out of the car. What if he has an accident? God forbid, he has a Gaussian accident. Then
But the
what?
problem is that the FIA test of the Formula One test for driver is so minimal that he actually passed it. So it therefore means that under the FIA rule he can race. It's left for the
Surely
team
there
to
is
not.
there is a clause though somewhere in the FIA regulations, like if they just
Mhm.
deem a driver unfit to race, they can deny them. I'm
Okay,
sure
they
that
can just say
exists.
it. Yeah, it has to,
So
because
it's
otherwise
all
the
the
team
FIA's
has
fault.
to
It's not
say.
Aston's fault because they're going to be as greedy as they want. You know, the FIA is supposed to be enforcing this, and it's
No, what's the
crazy.
grid? The
It's
grid.
crazy
Where's
that
the grid from?
you know they'd like to moan about Lewis's piercings, but someone with broken wrist who's just had surgery is not an issue for them. They
I
just
I
guess
look
think
past it.
isn't it? He went to the doctor that did what's his name?
the guy in Spain, the guy in
Operate
Spain for
no,
the
yeah, that
for the
operates all on
bike.
the
Yeah,
MotoG bike
yeah,
riders
yeah,
markets and all of that. But
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a car that's pulling how many G's? It's
Yeah.
not safe, and he hasn't raced yet. I'll come to you because we have a registered surgeon here in Diddy. I'll give Diddy the floor in a second, but I don't think it. He hasn't raced. The last time he drove a Formula One car was last year in Abu Dhabi.
Last year, yeah, last year.
and
So,
also
and he has a
too.
broken. Huh?
Also, too, I wanted to say, like, they came on the radio and they asked him to change his like entry or exit
And he
line
said he
on the
can't. He
morning,
can't. Yeah,
and
he
he
said
said
he
he
And
couldn't.
couldn't.
yet,
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and he,
that's not even at that point. You can't even be greedy with having him in the car because that man, at a critical moment, may not be able to take the best
I don't
line
understand the greed.
over
Why are
here.
you guys describing this as greed? I don't understand.
but why
Well, I was
else
just
would you
saying
put him
what
in?
someone else said, but just
No,
in
okay,
general.
because it's not the team. I don't know why there's no greed there. I think it's just the guy himself. They have a driver that could have driven this car for them this weekend. It wasn't as
Yeah, but
if
they could have
Apple
made that
doesn't have a
decision.
driver that will
Yeah,
replace him.
but the team could have made that decision and said, you know what, Lance, no, we're not putting you in. I don't care how much you rant and scream and kick and fuss and
His
whatnot.
father owns
You're not put
the team, Thanos.
exactly, and
Yeah.
because yes, and as his father who owns the team, his father should say, dude, you're sitting this one out. End the story. We're not having a debate about this. You're sitting this one out. You come back when you're fit and ready. It's not like what miss not driving means he's going to lose his seat. His name's on the door.
Yeah,
I think
So
the elder Lance is basically telling him, "You're the champ, man. You're the champ. Go and
I don't
show
care.
them what you can do." So
No.
that's what we
Anyway,
got.
anyway.
I see
Let me
him
get
as a
it.
man
Let
of
me
the
get
match.
it. Did it the mic. Thanks, Fifth. Did it because you're an actual surgeon, so you can give us more insight on this. Go on.
Yeah, so the team doctors at Aston will will have a say in this as well. So I mean I've even texted one of them being like, dude, what are you guys doing? How are you clearing them as medically fit? I mean he's not replied, but I know he's seen the message. So I'm presuming that they'll be having chats tonight as to whether what will happen over the weekend because clearly he wasn't, if something does happen, just as you were saying, God forbid, then it would fall back on, the medics have cleared him as fit
Yeah.
to drive.
That's
Ultimately, you can
malpractice.
say, oh, well, the driver wants to do this, but actually, no, the medics have to clear you as saying you're safe to
To
participate.
drive.
It's not just your life, it's other people's lives on the track, right? That you're potentially putting at risk. And even your assessment of your own injury might be, you need the medic to say, actually, yeah, that's, you need them to also clear it. And it's pretty obvious that actually you're not going to be able to get yourself out safely in a Grosjean situation. Then so yeah, they are going to have to look at that.
You
So
have
I'd
to.
be
Yeah,
surprised.
this has to be something there where you protect them from themselves. Because if he had a
Exactly
broken leg,
right.
they'd still say, "Look, I can race," even if the leg was dangling on by one vein holding it together. They'd still argue, "I can race."
Okay.
Because that's exactly how they're built. They're not
What
going to
Yeah.
turn around and say, "Oh, I can't race because I have a no." If it's one hand, they're still going to try and say that
But
they
he
can
didn't
race.
race,
So
he
the
didn't
team,
drive in the testings.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So the team, so there has to be something there where the drivers are protected from themselves.
Yeah, but
You have to have that.
to be fair, there wouldn't have been much tangible evidence, right? So the way this works, and I don't know, you guys might have some sort of occupational health or whatever at your own work processes, is that you have to work with the, in this case, driver to kind of believe what they're saying. And obviously the driver's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. But until you actually get some kind of feedback and evidence, so until he goes out in the car and you kind of say, okay, well, we're seeing how he's driving, but so today's the first they will have seen him actually get out, because he obviously wasn't there in testing, to see how he was managing the car. And I think you could see like he was struggling, right? So I think now that they've had a bit of that, I would hope at least like that they would then review that and be like, okay, well, are you going to be able to last race distance? Are you going to be able to manage if XYZ happens? Probably not is the answer. Like, he's not quite yet healed, is he?
One
And
thing I do
the
know
other
though,
thing is also it's not going to
he's
help his
gonna be
recovery.
high on painkillers in that car. He's gonna be high on painkillers.
Yeah.
That much I do know. I think he's gonna be on so much painkillers. His hand probably feel numb.
It's also not going to help his recovery. It's a weird one, because you'd kind of think sit this one out, it's going to help, in the short term, the pain, the kind of the loss of one race, but actually it's a long season, and just taking this week out, the next week to recover, getting those extra 2 weeks recovery is actually quite paramount when it comes to kind of joint injury. So I'd be surprised if he's racing on Sunday, given what
Oh,
we
I
just
don't. I don't think. I
he's
don't
gonna be
think.
racing.
No, I
He's
don't
gonna
think he
be
will
racing.
race.
Oh,
No,
you
I don't
see,
think. I,
you
I don't
see.
think they will allow him to race now,
You gonna
because
bet?
the I don't do best bets. I don't think. You know why? Because this issue is already making the rounds. The FI is actually watching.
Okay, hold on. Someone just shared something in here. Apparently, Lance did not pass the FIA mandated
Yeah, it
extracting
was
test
someone
on
that
the
sent to
first
me. I had to
attempt.
share.
What? He's
Yeah.
allowed to
Didn't.
try again. What's the point of the test then?
Where's the compassion, anyways? They're trying to kill him at this rate.
Exactly. I think the
If
guy
he
just came
failed,
because if
you should have given
did
him
you
a
listen to
second chance.
his radios? They were telling him some things. He was just taking them off disdainfully, like I don't care. So it's obvious he's the one saying I want to drive, and everybody's afraid of the boss. His dad owns the
Yeah,
team,
but he's not
so
the boss. His dad's the boss. So if his
I mean,
dad
yeah,
says you
I
can't
mean
drive, you
the
can't
team
drive.
people are afraid of his dad, therefore they cannot tell the kid no. For example, you can't drive. So
Well,
somebody
but
has to
then,
tell him you can't
well,
drive.
well, but that's not a good boss. Then that's not the right person to be a boss, because
Yeah,
he's not taking the actual well-being of his staff into consideration. He's just
I
thinking, I
I
don't
think
care.
say
okay.
that
On the second thought, I think maybe they just wanted him to try that today so that they can tell him you can't drive this car on Sunday. So maybe
Look,
if they didn't
if he failed the test one time, that was it. There shouldn't be a
Mm,
Well,
second, because
yeah, I mean,
if you get
it makes
caught in
no
a
sense,
fire,
right?
if
yeah,
you
The
end up in a
idea is,
Gaussian crash,
yeah,
you don't get a second
exactly.
chance
You're
to
yeah,
simulating what
extract
would
yourself.
happen, if there was a
in a real
serious
time
crash. So if you
situation, yeah.
failed the first time, it should be that's it, you're done. Because reality is, it's trying to simulate what would happen in that situation. And he's failed it
Yeah.
once, and then been
You
told
can
he
do a
needs to go
rewind.
faster.
You just hit the rewind button and say, "Let me try that
But
crash over
this just
again."
shows, like I said, it's a failing on the FIA. Like they're not treating this seriously at all.
The guy heard the car is so fast. He wanted to
Yeah,
try that.
but Jordan,
Mm.
I mean, a nose ring You know what I mean? Imagine if you end up in a crash and you have a nose ring, it could cause ripple such damage. You need to
We're
get
going
rid
to
of
do
that
that.
nose ring because it's dangerous. It's
Yeah,
absolutely
this,
dangerous. It could
yeah, the
melt,
nose
it could
stud is
do
the
this
most
and all of
dangerous
these
thing you
things.
can
But
wear.
you know what? Hey, if you can't pass the extraction test first time, try
Try
twice,
again,
three
try
times,
again,
four times. Try and
whatever
try until
time.
you pass, and then we'll let you go.
It
All right,
feels
hold
Yeah.
on.
so much.
I've got. Hmm?
That this is doing the round. I'm going to say it for anyone in the space that hasn't heard me say this before. As a head and neck surgeon, so this is like quite literally my area of expertise. Like the nose piercing thing, I can't. Like I've even seen the threads, like where other people have said, "Oh, well, Grosjean's ring was on his hand. It wasn't on his face, was it? That's much more important." I'm like, well, yeah, but Grosjean was in a fire and his head was not burnt, was it? Whereas his hand was burnt. What does that tell you? It's absolutely absurd that people are still going on this bandwagon. The nose and the ear piercings are like utterly like not at all in any way a concern for a medic, not one iota. If there was any burn to the face, I literally would just ignore the piercings. I'd be much more concerned about the fact that his face would be burnt. I would just not care at all about the nose or the ear. I would chop them off if I had to. It really wouldn't concern me.
But you know the funny thing with that is, Diddy, by the time the metal gets to the point where it
You are
starts to
fried.
melt,
You
you're
are fried.
literally ashes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you fried up. You're
You're
fried up
literally
easily.
dead.
Yeah.
You're ashes. So the idea, so that we all know that narrative they were talking about didn't make any sense,
They
and
can't even
it
defend
was
it.
just
Yeah, it's
it,
indefensible.
they didn't use common sense in thinking about first and foremost
takes
the
me beyond.
melting point of that metal.
They didn't even talk to experts. They should talk to experts and say, what do you think about this? It was a knee jerk reaction to something. They find something they can do to ban Lewis. It was
All
obvious. It
right.
was
All right, cool. Sorry, Diddy. I'm gonna jump cut in a bit because I've got some more people. I've got Myron, and then back to the fifth wheel podcast. Myron, what's up?
Yeah, on the Lance situation, I think all race drivers are just basically the same insights. As soon as they're able to get back behind the wheel, they're gonna take that opportunity, and it can start from like small things, from Lando Norris driving with tonsils last year to Niki Lauda coming back behind the wheel with like 50% of his body demorphed from burn scars. So as long as you're injured, if you're able to get back behind the wheel, you'll be guaranteed a race driver is going to take that opportunity. It's now up to the team to tell Lance that your hand is not up to that standard and whatever and whatever. And speaking of Aston Martin, I'm going to say something really, really controversial. Last year, we know Red Bull cost cap. Aston Martin was also one of the teams caught up with the cost cap. When are we going to start seeing implementations about Aston Martin cheating or something like that?
But
Because I feel it's something
that's
that's going
what's
to come.
they didn't breach the cost cap.
they didn't
Aston
bring the
Martin's
cost.
thing was an administrative thing.
Yeah,
So
they didn't
I think
file
they
on time.
filed their documents later than they were
Late.
supposed to.
Yeah.
So it was administrative. They actually were within the cost cap. So it was just Red Bull alone.
It's called a procedural breach versus
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a
actual
procedure,
breach of the cost cap.
which is basically they filed the
They
documents late.
fired them later.
Okay, if that's understandable with the performance of Aston Martin, and we all know that Aston Martin is a Mercedes customer, same, almost similar parts, same engine and stuff. Safe to assume that the aerodynamic engineers at Aston Martin are at least one or two steps ahead of Mercedes. Like, what can you say about that? A customer team is literally better than the mother team.
We don't
We've
know
seen
that
that
yet.
that's not unusual. Red Bull was better than Renault. McLaren was better than Mercedes, so it's not an unusual thing. But I think we're
Jumping.
jumping the gun here
Yeah.
by saying Aston Martin is
It's
better than
better than
Mercedes.
Mercedes.
The season. The season is not one race. It goes all the way. It's 23 races up until December. Come December, if Aston Martin finishes ahead of Mercedes, then we can actually say, yeah, Aston Martin were
We'll
better than
have this
Mercedes. But
conversation again.
yeah,
Yeah.
but for now, I think using 3 days of testing and 2 qualifying session as a definitive
Practice. It's
for
practice.
is I'm not ready to go down that road as yet. Because come tomorrow, you could qualify and you find, okay, both Aston Martins are behind both Mercedes. finish behind Mercedes on Sunday, then what we're going to say. So it's a matter of,
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good
even if
point.
Aston Martin beats them this weekend, it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen for the entire season. I'm saying it here. Mark the date, the time, whatever it is. Aston Martin will not beat Mercedes in the championship. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen because, again, if people are saying Mercedes are struggling to close the gap to Red Bull, which the gap to Red Bull between Red Bull and Mercedes is smaller than the gap between Mercedes and Aston was last year. So are we really going to sit here and say Aston Martin has actually closed a bigger gap than Mercedes could close to Red Bull?
Are you willing to bet something on that, Thanos?
Okay,
I think we need a forfeit for that.
We're betting.
Well, I don't
because
know
we're getting assumptions, we're getting rumors from Mercedes about bringing new side pod parts.
It's not rumors,
these new
it's
side pod
facts.
parts. So
they've confirmed.
Is this Mercedes admitting that they like really flawed up the zero? If the new side pod upgrade comes and it's not a zero side pod
They also
concept.
said the side pod is
the
not
issue.
a different side pod.
We need to stop again. We need to stop with this side pod conversation because it's like we keep talking about side pods, and
so are we saying side pods are not the problem?
It's not the problem. The side pod is just the outer layer of the car. What the real philosophy of the car is what's beneath the skin. It's the layout. It's the floor. No one knows how their floor is designed because with this regulation, apparently, most of your performance comes from the floor. Ground effect, case in point. So if you have a floor that's working and it's efficient, then you're going to see the performance. So is it Mercedes floor? Is it how they've set the layout? We don't know.
One of the things we heard from testing as well, like the rumors floating around, was that Red Bull have somehow managed to run the floor still 10 millimeters close to the ground than everyone else. And the reason why teams can't do that is because of the porpoising they saw last year. So obviously Red Bull have found a trick. It might be on the suspension or something. And that is a key part of, that's going to give you a ton of downforce because 10 millimeters.
I saw a tweet today apparently where Amos is saying that Red Bull can't run the car that low.
Yeah, the floor will be damaged over a race distance.
I'm sure I saw a tweet that says something about that rumored about them. They actually can't do that.
Amos said it.
I think I saw 15 millimeters.
The underfloor would get damaged, and then the car can
15 millimeters was what they raised the edge of the floor by.
Right.
So we're talking about ride height. So they can.
Oh, you're talking about okay.
They can run it 10 millimeters lower than everybody else.
Affected them today, actually, because by their standard, they didn't perform better today. Because when I read that Amos article where it says that if they try to run it lower, that it will damage the underbody, and that they might not actually finish a race distance, so they had to raise it up, and that would induce drag on the car. Basically.
Or they'd probably get disqualified because the plank would wear more than
So at the end of the day, at the end of the day, if they had to actually raise it up that way, could that be the reason why their performance dropped today?
So Jordan, what's the bet? Because I don't really gamble.
But I don't know. We're gonna have to think of one.
That is Jordan dodging.
So that's two people I'm going to take. I'm going to win bets with this year because Tanya bet me that Hulkenberg was going to finish on the podium this year. I think that's the easiest $50 I'll ever win in my entire life.
Oh, double it, pass it on to the next person, man. You can make so much money off that.
No, I ain't passing it on to no one. I want that.
Pass it to yourself. That's your bank account, man. I don't know.
I have another bit. Mercedes are gonna revert to the popular side pod method. I know you said side pods are not the factor, but I promise you, because I have a feeling, sure, the ground effects, the most complex parts of the cars are underneath the cars, but we cannot shy away from the fact that the way air flows around the car also plays a factor. If you're not directing the air to the necessary parts, if you're not directing good air to the Coke bottle area, if you're not having interrupting flows, if your car is literally dragging itself through the air,
I'm not aerodynamicist, so I can't tell you that's about all of this airflow thing. I'm no aerodynamicist. I'm just listening to the team, and what I find is a lot of people don't listen to what the team's actually saying. They're listening to what the likes of Ted and other people outside of the team are saying about keep continually talking about side pods when the team has consistently said it has our issues has nothing to do with the side pod. The side pod is not a problem. It's beyond that. It's more than just that. And they've mentioned they're going to bring an upgrade. They didn't say when. They also said it's going to be a change in the side pod, but it won't be look like anything that's
Any
on
other
the
one,
grid.
yeah.
It still
It's
won't
just
look
an
like a Red Bull
evolution of their
side pod
own.
or
Yeah,
anything. It's just an
yeah,
evolution of what they have. And which is
yeah.
why I'm going to maintain that I think the car they're running now is a test car for
Do, do,
like what they would
do,
have done in previous years.
I've got a
do
question
anybody
though.
actually believe that if Mercedes think the side pod was the issue, they will be so recalcitrant to actually change
Exactly.
it?
Exactly.
If that was
Because
an issue, that they are so boneheaded that no, we don't want to listen to anybody, we will leave it there. Is that what people actually think about Mercedes?
pretty much,
If the side
I
pod
mean,
was the problem, they would change it in an instant because that's even an easy part to design and bring out of the factory. It's not a huge deal.
would
They've said
they?
it consistently. It's not the side pod. Something else is causing their problem. And probably they don't even know what it is, or probably they know. But I think they know they are sure it's not a side pod. That's why it's still there on the road.
I've got a
I don't
question,
know if I
guys.
buy that personally.
Is
I don't know if I
huh?
do.
is
Why
James?
not?
Sorry.
I'll tell you why. Sorry for jumping over the people. I'll tell you why. I think the reason why is because they're committed to this design philosophy to the point where they're now. I mean, they don't have a choice. Like if they change their side pod, here's my question. This is all rooted in a question that I have. So I understand that the side pod design itself may not be the reason why Mercedes is having issues. But if I understand this correctly, last year their issue was that their floor wasn't able to maintain that I don't want to call it suction, but the airflow necessary in the bottom to create that downforce, right? And part of the reason why was because their side pod was so small that the edges of the floor couldn't effectively hold that seal properly, right? So it may not be
Mm,
directly the side pod's fault because
Mm.
it's floor rigidity issues, but if that was the issue and they're kind of compromising the structure that's holding the floor, which is kind of the side pod design, and they are now a year behind development effectively, right? Like if they were to go back to a design that's similar to Red Bull or a design similar to Ferrari, they would be at least a year behind development, probably close to 2 years
No,
at this point.
which is
So
which
when
no,
the U13
no,
debut,
you're actually right because they did say that if they were to, and I think I don't remember who said it. I think it was Mike Elliott, someone else who said that if they were to go ahead and do a Red Bull or a Ferrari sort of thing, they've basically taken 2 steps backwards.
and
So
that's why they
rather,
don't want
so
to
this
change.
rather, yeah, yeah, because again, because they see something. There's something they're seeing that gives them the confidence not to change. I genuinely don't think they're that stubborn to think, oh, no, we just refuse to change because again, they're competitors. And if there's something in the Red Bull concept, because I think all of these teams, basically, I don't remember where I keep hearing these things and I can't remember where I hear them. Where someone said they went into one of these one of these teams design room, and what they had on the wall was a big ass um, picture breakdown of another team's car that they were actually studying, not their own car, the other team. So I'm sure they've actually tried the Red Bull model,
Who
the
yeah.
designed this
Ferrari
car?
model. Huh?
Who designed this car?
John Owen. John Owen.
James Allison was not involved, correct?
James Allison is not a designer. John Owen was the guy who designed the car.
Mm.
The same guy who designed the W11, the W12. I think
So
he took over from Aldo Costa.
When you talk about designer, him being chief designer, what his job is principally to bring multiple departments together. So, like I can't remember who the guy is who's now the head of vehicle dynamics, but he would have been the first one to look at what the best suspension design was for this era and stuff, and he would have an input into the final piece that John Owen puts together. He's almost the person who makes it into a finished product once all the other parts of the car are specced out. So I guess to put it all on him is probably wrong to say he designed the entire car, even though he's the chief
And
designer.
James Allison is he's like just a glorified project manager, to be honest.
Yeah,
but is that
that's
the
pretty much
mistake
what
they
he did.
made? Like, you
Of
know,
course,
James
yeah.
Allison has got a reputation for being one of the greatest Formula One engineers of all time. Is he being wasted building a boat and
But he's not doing that anymore.
sat on the beach doing nothing, fishing,
He's
whatever
not
he's
doing that.
doing?
He's not doing that anymore.
He retired
He's
early.
no longer doing the America's Cup project. He's
So
now. I
what? So
think
what
they.
is he actually doing then? That, I
He's
mean, that's the
now.
question.
I think he's called Chief Technological Officer. I think because apparently
Chief technical officer.
Technological officer.
It's technically roots actually. Chief technical officer for Mercedes is James Allison.
No, the Chief Technical Officer is. It's
Yes.
you sure it's
The
not technical? Either way,
the
all
chief technical officer is
Okay.
then
Okay.
the technical director is Mark Elliott. Yeah.
So James Allison's position right now, he's looking at future technologies. That's what he's doing.
Okay. You're saying 2026 car, for example.
So he's looking at future. Yeah, he's pretty much looking at future technology. The guy who's actually responsible for the overall W14 project is Mike Elliott.
Yes, I know that. Okay. Yeah.
Mike Elliott doesn't answer to James Allison.
Do you believe he's the right guy for us?
Because James Allison actually was supposed to leave Mercedes. The role he has now was specifically created to keep him at Mercedes.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it's.
You're jumping the queue, dude.
Oh,
Keep
sorry.
your hand up. The fifth wheel. Sorry, go on.
No worries, guys. It happens. Okay, so I want to kind of transition this conversation a little bit because I haven't heard much about this, but conversation about power units has been pretty much non-existent. Now, I know that obviously power units aren't changing because there's a freeze going on, so it's really efficiency. But, you know, there's still maybe a couple of upgrades here and there, but that hasn't been a conversation topic at all. And I'm curious, you know, Mercedes power last year seemed to be a little bit down compared to the other engines. So I was curious what people had heard about that, as well as with Alpine. I mean, we haven't heard anything from Alpine really from testing or from these FP sessions at all. They're looking okay, but not so great. So I'm really curious what y'all think about the engines in general.
The only thing I've read so far is Max Verstappen quote actually saying that Mercedes have found more power than Honda have, and they might be on par with Honda now, with Ferrari a little bit ahead. So at least from Max's point of view, it seems positive on that front. I haven't heard anything about Ferrari's games.
How will Mas know that, for example?
Look,
you can kind of estimate it off GPS traces.
Yeah, because it was Mercedes actually really down on power. Because last year, I still believe the reason why they can't even run that car was because it was bouncing around like a kangaroo. That's not because the power wasn't there. It was because they couldn't actually apply power to the car. The car was basically useless for that. So if there is even a chance that Mercedes is down on power, I think myself and Thanos were having this conversation. Maybe in single digits.
If you group all four power units together and actually come up with across all four power unit, the plus minus margin is probably 6 bhp. All these talk about. I saw someone put out a tweet that says the Ferrari is 20 bhp up on the Honda, and the Honda is 10, and the Honda is 10 bhp up on the Mercedes. I'm like, give me a friggin' break. That's absolute bullshit. That there's no way, those numbers are way too big, and especially when you consider the regulations has not changed.
It's frozen.
So the margin, the gains will be minimal. It's not 30. Do you know how much is 30? Come on. 30 bhp alone is at probably about half a second.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to buy into that theory that Red Bull is 30 bhp up on Mercedes and 20 up on a Honda. No, I think if you actually put them together, the plus minus is not double digits. And that's across all four power units. I see there was a tweet earlier this week from Ted that says, the trick that Mercedes missed was that they didn't build a power unit that was powerful enough but unreliable, 90%. Then they can go back and use the reliability fix to actually fix it. And I'm like, okay, that just doesn't make any sense. So you're saying someone's deliberately going to build a power unit knowing it's unreliable just so they can get use the advantage of actually making it reliable after the freeze?
Well, Ferrari
why not just build it powerful and reliable at the same time? I don't get it, because that risk, that's a serious risk you're taking. Because say you do that. You do, huh?
You could argue that's what Red Bull did. They weren't that
or Ferrari too. Ferrari probably did that.
What do you mean?
They built an engine that was unreliable, and then they will go back and
yeah, but there's no guarantee that your reliability fix will keep you at the same power level. Your reliability fix could actually, you'd have to give up something. You'd have to give up something to gain that reliability. There's no way you can actually have the same amount of power on unreliable PU as you do if you're going to apply you have to give something up.
I guess the point is that the fix was you have scope to improve that.
You can always have the opportunity to go back to the engine.
But the thing, you also have to remember the when it comes to the reliability fixes, certain things, it's limited, and the teams have to agree to it. Although the power unit manufacturers have to agree to it. It's not just, we need to fix this and you get the green light. I think that I distinctly remember the rule says the other teams have to agree to the fix. So most teams will know if you come and say, my crankshaft or whatever, they'll have some idea of, okay, what's the gain from this. So I don't buy it. I just think it doesn't make any sense. And who's to say Mercedes approach is wrong? Who's to say Mercedes engine, even though it's reliable, is not as powerful as the Ferrari?
Well, we've seen it over the course of the last year. And
what did we see? But Mercedes' issue last year wasn't power unit.
No, it wasn't power unit. It wasn't power unit. Obviously, it was reliable, yes, but in terms of is it more powerful than Red Bull or Ferrari? I don't.
What was it supposed to do exactly? Because even if you apply the power of a rocket to that car, it wasn't going to go faster. It would just be bouncing.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm not disputing that, but
so you can actually not tell if the power of the engine was a problem. So you can't actually use that.
It's not just that, Dave. Obviously, something has gone wrong with the Mercedes concept for last year and this year. Something fundamentally has gone wrong. Lewis cannot be saying 2 years in a row that they are further away. Something has gone wrong, and people don't want to admit. This is the thing that I don't understand. People don't want to admit that Mercedes may have no.
When we're talking,
one second, bro. 1 second, please. For Lewis to say what he said today, and I've said to you before because I just come into the hospital to see my little one. There's a cause for concern in regards to what Mercedes are doing. It's either they have missed something or something has fundamentally gone wrong. You can't, for 2 seasons, your driver is saying the same thing as last year that, they're not going to close the gap. I'm not expecting them to overtake Red Bull. I'm not saying that.
He never said they're not going to close the gap.
No, but he's saying that at the present moment, he's like, they're not going to close the gap at the present moment. I'm just like, even another comment that was made that he said when they asked him, do they think that they're able to close the gap? And he's like, he's not happy with the concept of the car. Something has fundamentally gone wrong. Which, yes, we know that Mercedes' time would have to come to an end sooner rather than later. And I'm just thinking, what has gone wrong? Why is the car not competitive? What were they doing in the winter? And what they brought now to say, okay, we're not where we need to be.
But
what has gone on from last year?
We've not even had a race yet.
Yes, I know we haven't had a race, but if you look at last year, what Lewis was saying, and everyone was telling me,
last year's
Thanos, when I was saying
about this year, we've not seen a race this year as yet. Again, they said from the beginning that they expect to start the season on the back foot, but they expect to catch up at the same time. Granted, they should have started the season on the front foot, but given where they were coming from last year, it's pretty impossible to actually expected them to start.
Was that the mistake then with last year's car? Was that a mistake doing the concept of what they did with last year's car and not having designing it a different way? I'm just
look.
I don't know. I'm just trying to understand.
These cars are designed by numbers.
Yeah.
and what they've seen and what they saw in the wind tunnel gave them cause for optimism. They liked what they saw. But again, what did you say, Kingsley? James Allison said you can design the best car in the world in the wind tunnel and all of that, but you don't know how good it is until it hits the
You
track.
put it on track, yeah.
And they put it on the track. They got all the numbers, everything for them lined up with their expectations, with their targets. They hit the targets, and they were happy. They put it on the track, and it didn't materialize because there was a phenomenon that they didn't account for, that they didn't know about. It affected them, and that phenomenon then
Why did it affect? Then my question to you is then,
affected everybody, even
yeah, it
Red
may
Bull.
have, yeah, but you didn't see it on Red Bull as much as you saw it
Yeah,
predominantly on the
but they still had
Mercedes.
but
Yeah,
again,
they still had an issue, but they were more. This is the thing. Like, if you look at Ferrari and Red Bull, yes, you can say the pole position, but they were still dominant because of the design of their the design of their car.
Because they had one issue, and their Ferrari issue. Ferrari had the porpoising. Mercedes had more than porpoising as an issue. Porpoising actually masked the other issues.
Every other issue they had,
because once they fixed it, something else popped up. It was kind of like
the thing
Jack in the Box.
The thing with Ferrari as well is they had porpoising, but it was at a level where it wasn't so bad that they had to change the ride height of their car, which is obviously what
Mercedes
they built the whole thing about. Yeah, Mercedes had to increase their car, and obviously that loses you a ton of downforce.
And then they had to use the wing to compensate for it, because without the wing, if they had actually raised the ride height and gone with a medium wing, they'd probably be probably worse off.
And that's where we are now, really, because they've realised what causes porpoising. They had a downforce target last winter, which they met in the wind tunnel in the simulator.
And in real life, they are not seeing the numbers.
Yeah, they didn't meet it in real life, and there was no way they could have seen that because they didn't have it in their simulation tools. But now they do, so they can see that. But now they're playing catch up constantly because they've got to recover that downforce and then gain the downforce that Red Bull and Ferrari
they are losing rear downforce
in 1 year.
In slow corners. The rear downforce is gone. They can't even
find
it.
Wouldn't that be for the wing that they've got? That even though you're gaining more on the straight, you're sacrificing in terms of when it comes to the corners. I swear that's what they were saying the other day, that if you've got a medium, if you've got a medium wing, that because you're fast on the straight, you're actually sacrificing when it comes to the corners. Which
that is true, but the wings don't make much difference in terms of like differences between teams because they're pretty standard anyway. The rest of the downforce has to come from the underbody and the floor.
It's the floor.
Mercedes are missing all the downforce that the other teams have,
and
because of this ground effect mistake they made last year.
And this is another thing, because James was saying that they've made changes to the underneath of the floor. Could that be a possibility that they can't run it as much as they can, like the Red Bull and Aston Martin? Because one of the technical directors from Red Bull has gone over to Aston Martin, and he's implemented the philosophy that Red Bull have got in terms of they can run their car so low to the ground it absorbs the bumps. And I believe.
Do you think that Aston Martin is a brand new car, brand new concept?
No, I don't know.
Martin from last year with upgrades.
No, I know it's this. It looks different, but in terms of what they've taken from the Red Bull, from the side pods that they had last year, and now the floor itself, they're able to run it closer to the ground like Red Bull can.
But we don't know how close they're running it to the ground. We're getting this from. We don't know how close they're running the cars to the ground.
We're just guessing
compared to Mercedes. We're just guessing. At the end of the day, again, you're panicking.
No, I'm not. I'm not
panicking because you keep talking about Aston Martin doing this.
Anthony had other things.
You're panicking, dude. It's one race out of 23.
Anthony can't panic. He can't panic. He has something that's competing for his time.
It's not a case of panic. I expected Mercedes to play catch up.
Expected Mercedes to. You expected him to what?
No, I expected Mercedes to be on the back foot, but I didn't think that it would be a case that we'll be hearing from Lewis after the free practice that
what did they say about expectations or met expectations? So
Mm.
your resentment is because you expected them to perform to a
No,
certain
but
level, but they are not even meeting that at all. Yeah,
Kingsley, what they
I
said
understand what
in
you're saying. I'm not even against it at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
You have a right to feel that way because the expectation was that last year's car was they actually used that to learn what was wrong with it and then fixed it in this one. And if we are still repeating
Look,
the
man,
same problem from
that
last year,
car.
then it means
You
I,
something
learn
I'm
from
needs to
you
be.
learn from your mistakes. Like if
sim.
you do something, you've
So
done something wrong
who's to say
one
they haven't
season.
learned from their mistakes?
Say that again.
How will we even know they haven't learned from their mistakes?
Well, we'll see what happens, but it's not encouraging from when your driver is saying,
Yeah, but
"No,
we know
but
Lewis. We
this is
know
the
Lewis.
thing,
At
though."
some point, Lewis is we know Lewis. He's frustrated right now, and he's going to say these things. But I guarantee you, a couple of days from
No,
now,
He's
but
after the
usually
weekend,
under control when
Thanos,
he's
watch the
this is the
motivational
same
tweet.
thing we had last season, though, when
What's the
everyone's saying
motivational
that
tweet?
Mercedes were sandbagging, and when Lewis came out and said, "No,
Who said
if you
Mercedes was sandbagging?
no last season, everyone's saying that Mercedes were sandbagging when it
Nah,
came to the testing,"
people
and
who
I was
said that.
saying, "No, hold
No
on one
one said
second,"
Mercedes was
and I was
Yeah,
sandbagging.
people said
saying,
it. People said it. When
Yeah,
Mercedes was
because
telling
yeah,
everyone
because
our car
be,
is this is what we have, people were saying this is a lie.
yeah,
Mercedes
because they were
are
basing
hiding
it
one
on
thing or
previous
two.
years, thinking that it's the
Yes.
same
"Yeah."
thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't a
Well,
genuine thing.
this
I've got,
Mercedes.
I've got.
Can I just ask this Mercedes fans question? What is the expectation for the team this year? What are y'all expecting the team to do? Because realistically, you're not going to fight for the champion. So like, what do y'all
Yeah.
want?
Why do you say that?
Why you think they can't fight for the championship?
Because you've got a very fast Red Bull that seems relatively well balanced. You've got two fast Ferraris. I mean, that's the reason why. Like, you've got two teams ahead of you that have a year of experience of building fast cars with this regulation set. So, setting
How
the
many?
expectation that Mercedes is going to come in and just win the championship,
No,
i.e.,
no.
That's
We didn't
nobody
say
said
win.
that. Fighting for
You
championship
said
and
fighting for
winning
the
it is a
championship.
different
It's
thing
a different
entirely. I
thing.
think you are putting words in our mouth. That's
I'm
not what we
They can
said.
asking.
fight
I
for the
didn't put
championship.
any words in anyone's mouth. I'm asking what your expectations are. I didn't say that's what you're saying. I'm asking what is your expectation.
No,
My
you just
expectation.
said that Mercedes was going to come and win everything. That's what you said.
No, I
My
said the opposite. I said, is your you're not expecting them to win the championship, not expecting them to win championship, correct? Or what does success look like for the Mercedes 2020?
championship.
Well,
That's if you don't if they don't win the
to me, it's
championship,
winning
they
races
fail.
multiple times.
If they don't win the championship, they have not succeeded. That's how that's for me. That's what success
But
is.
then,
But my
Thanos, if they
expectation.
don't, what should they do?
Well, if
Just
they
carry
don't,
on
they
and do
need.
nothing.
No, if they don't win the championship, they have to go back to, like I've been saying all along. They've dug themselves into this hole. They're going to have to dig themselves out of it. And there's no easy fix to it. They're going to have to. They're going to have to work their asses off to get themselves out of this position because this is of their own doing.
So
And
Thanos, the reason why that's an
I see a positive in the Aston Martin being this wild card been thrown in here. And the main positive I see is that it buys us time. And that's what Mercedes needs, right? Is that these first few races, this is a long season one. It's a long season, 23 races. They are like loaded towards the back end of the season. And we know that Mercedes can develop the car. We've got more development time than Red Bull will have because they're going to be,
Ferrari.
and Ferrari, especially Red Bull, because they're going to get their extra 7% reduction. That hopefully out develop them. But the advantage of having Aston Martin, whilst it appears to be tail, is that we know that Alonso is gonna bring the fight to the Red Bull, and he's gonna take points effectively off them.
Alonso doesn't fight mass. There's no two ways about it.
And
This
did it?
is mass is just like mass.
Here's another way of looking at it as well. If Aston Martin can make that leap in performance, why can't Mercedes do the
well,
same?
the reason why I'm not so sure about that argument is I want to give a corollary to the Aston Martin situation that hasn't been discussed, I think, a lot, which is McLaren. Right, McLaren had it bad last year. Right, effectively, I mean, they lost fourth, and everyone blamed Daniel Ricciardo, and everyone blamed a lot of things. But let's be real, the car itself was also not great. Right, like the driver lineup didn't help. Absolutely. But the car that they gave those drivers the first race of the last season was bad. And if we're looking at what the rumors and what people are saying about McLaren now, it's only getting worse. So I think there's a false dichotomy here that just because there's a wild card where Aston Martin seems to have gained a lot of at least qualifying pace, that they're going to, by extension, all of a sudden become this sort of beacon of, oh, any team could come back to the top, when we're seeing the exact opposite with McLaren, who had a bad design, and they seem to have tried to make improvements and have gone worse. So I'm not saying that Mercedes is going the McLaren route. I'm just saying that if Mercedes is sticking with the design that didn't work last year, let me finish, then there is a conversation to be made. Are they going to go down the Aston route, or are they going to go down the McLaren route? And right now, it looks like they're going more McLaren than Aston right now. I'm not saying
but hold on. Their concept,
why do people thinking?
Hold on, Kingsley. Regards to the Mercedes concept, and I think this is what it's gets overlooked in this whole thing as well. That concept won a race, had a pole, and 17 podiums.
Yes.
So it tells you there's potential. The concept isn't as flawed or as
hang
bad
on,
as
though. A lot of the podiums came down to reliability, really, though, didn't they? And strategy errors rather than pace.
No, they've actually been on podium on pure
on merits.
On merit.
Yeah, but when you say on merit, most of the time it was Ferrari fucking up. So
whose fault is that? That's so. So Mercedes should somehow be penalized for that. That's not their problem.
No,
we're not saying
it's not like they were
just
saying Ferrari.
Sorry,
no,
we're
but
saying that
I think
you won a
pure on
championship on
performance,
pace, right?
they didn't make it on the podium, aside of Brazil.
Sorry.
I mean, I think what Jordan is trying to say is the pure on performance, what they've performed. Like, for instance, if you look at Brazil last year, that was pure on Mercedes pace and engine and all of it, right? They did a brilliant job. That was a 1-2 just on Mercedes power, right? So, but the other ones and most of George's, predominantly the starting season, George being on the podium was because of some of the F-ups from Ferrari and other teams. I truly believe Mercedes can still challenge the championship, and not because of the, let's say we trust in the design and everything else. I really think the reason why Mercedes can challenge the championship is because they've got the two best drivers. I really think they are furious. I think they're better than any driver lineup at the moment. And that's why if they get a cut it's slightly, even if it's slightly behind Red Bull, I think they can make it to the championship. 100%.
I just want to reply quickly to the fifth podcast. Was my point about Alonso and Aston Martin wasn't about, well, that means that any car can do it. It was more that having another team in the mix means that if you've got another horse in the race, it means that the points are, you're less likely to have one team running away with the season.
Yeah.
That was purely my point, not the. You're right. It could
but
yeah.
If you look at the race pace simulation right now, it looks like it's Red Bull, then half a second, then we have three teams. So it's almost like Red Bull will lock out most likely the front two rows of the grid, drive off into the distance, and then we got a few teams behind, which, well, like I'm saying again, would be pretty much a disaster for these set of regulations. But
Jordan, I don't think we
don't say that on your timeline because Max fans will come for you.
No, I don't think we should be worried in the first few races. Even if Mercedes ends up number 3 or number 4, let's say, for instance, the first 3 races, and if they can bring their upgrade on time, let's say in the next 4 to 5 races, I think if they win 12 races, they can still win the championship. I don't expect dominance from Max this year as last year. Last year was a lot of F-up from Ferrari as well, obviously, and liability issues, you name it.
Yeah, I would agree. Wait to the upgrade package. Really, I think what I said at the start. That's my overall feeling.
I think Mercedes will be there or thereabouts because they can develop. The good part about the W14 is that it's a car they can develop, unlike the W13 where they were trying to understand the concept. So they obviously know where they're lacking a downforce, for example. How the car could lose downforce in low speed corner. I think those are easy fix. I think where Lewis' frustration is coming from is George that said, "Look, we have problems. Those problems can easily be fixed." I think where Lewis' worry is coming from is, even if we fix those things, do we have enough delta to cover up the deficit we have to the top teams? I think that's where the frustration is coming from. So even if Mercedes solve all their problem, you don't have the margin to actually meet up with the top
What's up,
teams. I think that's
Milo?
where the association is coming
You
from.
see, and Kingsley, and that's the point that people are ignoring in this whole situation. What you
Yeah,
just said, the fact that compared to last year, they couldn't develop that car to
yeah,
the manner they wanted to. They've got a stable platform now. It's not where they want it to be, but
hmm
it's something that they can get it to where it should be.
yeah.
So they can now develop. They've got an idea. They've got something that they can work with, and I think that's what Mike Elliott said in his interview with Ted Kravitz. That
Ted,
now
Ted, yeah,
we have something, a platform that we can develop, because the people were complaining, why didn't they run the medium downforce wing in testing?
yeah.
Oh, it's going to create problem. It didn't look like it created any problem
Oh, they were
coming
only
to them.
down by a few kph. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. The car wasn't porpoising.
at
So
all.
you can see that they've actually dealt with that.
It's
So it's
solved
a
that.
matter
Yeah,
now of putting on performance, and we know that's something that they can do. They said they've got
over a
something.
season,
They've got
yes.
another. They've got.
So, Thanos,
They've got a.
to your
Yeah, go
point,
on.
to your point quickly about this sort of expectation for Mercedes to win the championship. If not, that's a failure. I want to throw this out here though. So it seems like the Mercedes car, regardless of you're talking about last year, this year, with all these changes, it seems like it's on a knife's edge, right? Like they have to get it perfectly to align with the track and the conditions and everything to have good pace, right? Like I think you'd agree on that, correct?
Yeah.
No, I
So
don't. The,
Well,
the
maybe last
W13,
year's
you can
car, but
say
we
that
don't know anything about this year's
we don't
car,
know the
do we?
range of this car right now. We don't know how.
correct. We don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can. Yeah.
Okay, we don't know the range of this car. I'll give you that. But we do know from last year's expectations from the car, from the design, whether it's side pod or floor, whatever you want to talk about, Mercedes are having a little bit of a tough time with this turbo hybrid, with this set of regulations, and they're trying to make it work, right? This year,
Mhm.
maybe they will. We'll see. But the point I want to make is that if the expectation is them for to win the championship, even when they got the setup correct last year, it's not like they won races by 30 seconds. I don't know how much I don't remember off the top of my head how much Lewis was ahead by
No.
the third person on the podium. But the point I'm trying to make here is that if the expectation is them to win a championship, I mean, Red Bull, they can throw their car into any track to the point where they're still fast. This year, they're supposed to have limited testing time, but they're still fast. Like, it doesn't seem to impact them. Like, nothing seems to impact them in a negative way. Now, maybe this, like, slight raise in the ride height might change some things. We'll see. But if we're talking about a championship winning car, I think I would rather put my odds on a car that seems capable of taking any track as opposed to a car that seems to have a very narrow window of operating based on last year's performance. Again, we don't know what's
That's an
happening.
But
easy.
I
Isn't
would
that an easy?
dispute.
That was the low hanging fruit. That was the car that won the championship last year. So you would be stupid to bet against the Red Bull, for example. That's easy to just say because
Right.
this is a car that easily could have won 19 races last year, for example. So I don't know if that is actually
But
The
that's
required
the
some
problem the
technical
problem
stuff to
they
get
had
us.
last year, which meant that the car became very track specific, and I think that was the thing. It was not a narrow setup window; it was track specific because the suspension couldn't deal with the bouncing and the
in my
compliance they needed to be able to run the floor stiff enough to get the full ground effect,
yeah. So
maximum downforce. So it was all about being on smooth tarmac. That's why they did well at Silverstone because it's completely smooth track. That's why they did well in Brazil again. It was about being able to run that suspension where they could. So, they've completely redesigned, they've completely redesigned the suspension this year. So in theory, that problem shouldn't present itself if the changes they looked at have actually worked. So I think you have to wait and see on that one really, because that was one of the key things they talked about over the winter improving.
yeah. So I know someone else has their hand up, so I don't want to take up too much time. I want to let them be able to speak. But the last point I just want to make is that the only thing I'm maybe trying to challenge here is an expectation from Mercedes fans that it's either win the championship or it's a bust. Like, because I don't know if that's. I think you're setting yourself up for failure. Is all I'm saying, because I don't know that with a car that won the championship last year, that's so quick, even now, even after a year of development time for the other teams that got more development time, they're still looking quick. So I'm just curious about that because I feel like you're kind of setting yourself up to be sad, and I don't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah, but I mean, okay, we deep down we know they're not going to win the championship, but we still can be hopeful and optimistic. So
I
when we
know
say,
that. I don't know
when
that,
we say,
Thanos. That's
yeah,
just you. I
well,
don't know
not
that.
you, not you.
Yeah,
You're a strange individual. But
yeah, I don't
when
know that.
we say, so what we still, so when we say win or bust, you still it's either you, if you don't win, you failed. There's,
That's the expectation of
second
Mercedes. Mercedes
second
Conte.
is, hold on,
Yeah,
second is first place loser, third is the third place loser. So, you know, we still can, we know they're not going to win, but we're still going to say, well,
we're
my
talking about
expectation
a
is for them to
team
win.
whose worst finishing position in the last 10 years is third, isn't it?
Yep.
Like that's what we're talking about. So I don't know why you people don't have faith in Mercedes. I do.
You
Don't
got to
worry.
have faith.
Yeah, you gotta have faith in this
Put
thing.
on some George Michael, man, and stop acting like, stop being Debbie. Where's, like my friend Charlie call you like Debbie Downers? Where's Charlie? Charlie's somewhere in here sneaking, and she's gonna
Hey,
laugh.
somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, you Debbie Downers. Come on, man, have a bit
Down
of
us.
faith. Look, you don't win 4 championship by accident, and you don't win 8 championships by accident over 3 different set of regulation changes. That means you actually know what you're doing, and you're good at your job.
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes not choosing to deviate from their concept that they're running right now means that they're confident that what they have, they know if they get it right, it's going to work. The problem is we don't have that time. Lewis doesn't have that time for them to get
Yeah,
it
it's
right.
Lewis.
They need to get it right like last year, not
Yeah,
next year or the year after. It needed to have gotten right last
before
year.
now. Yeah.
But
So
the problem
it's
is as well, you're looking back at the last years, but we're in a very different era now with the cost cap. They've made
yeah.
they've already made a ton of people redundant,
Mm-hmm.
and they're limited on wind tunnel running. So, like I said before, they got to do it on intuition rather than just brute forcing the solution. So they can't have engineers in parallel working on various different concepts now and shove them all into the wind tunnel and just go, well, this is clearly the best one, so we go with this one. Just what they're doing before. They've got to be more selective about their ideas. So
Well, they
that's
can do like what.
why history doesn't necessarily apply here, because it's a completely different set of
Well,
requirements
Can you not
in the way
design?
you
But you
approach
once you
car
put on a
design.
car, it's when you
but it's
start
still
car.
the same. It's still the same principles. You have to design. You have to
Yes,
research and design a car.
and design a car. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yes, but
regulations might have
what I'm saying
changed,
is,
but the whole the overall blueprint is still the same.
yeah, but
The
what I'm
procedure
saying
manual is
is,
still the same.
before, because you weren't limited on anything, not even money or anything, you can come up with as many designs as you want and test every single one of them with no limitation, and
Mm-hmm.
have as many people as you want in parallel to do that. Now, now we're looking at a situation where they've got to be more selective about what things they actually try in the wind tunnel, which means that
Man.
you don't have this brute force ability now to be able to just almost trial and error the right concept. You have to
They should just
hone in on the right concept, if
they
that
should
makes
just say
sense.
they're just designing a boat and use that as an excuse. Because I mean,
Yeah, I'm all for that. I mean,
isn't that what what's his name Otmar came out and said
Yeah.
recently,
yeah,
talking
well,
about
why
someone
not?
using creative thing and designing boat or something like that. They can just say, oh, we're designing a boat, and it just so happens that they're designing
Well, what he
another
said
rocket.
last year, Toto should. I don't think he would ever do this. I think Toto's too honest. But given that Red Bull literally got a slap on the wrist for breaching the cost cap, he should have just gone hell for leather
Yeah,
and gone,
but here's
you
the
know what?
problem.
We're just going to breach
But
the
that's
cost
not
cap.
going to work,
But
man.
here's the problem with that. Mercedes breaches the cost cap and gets a far more severe penalty.
Yeah,
Then
because
what?
Ben's only
And
got
not
one
just
friend, Christian
and not
Horner.
just
He's
that,
not
the
friends with Toto.
Mercedes organization is a different body entirely. They don't.
Yeah, the brand is too
The brand is too
important
powerful
for
to
these
do this.
guys to actually
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
anything to screw it up, man. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's
all right.
also an
yeah, I
intentional
agree.
thing. Like, let's not lie to the listeners here. Like, the rules do specifically state that if they intentionally go over the cost cap, then they are charged. Like,
Yeah,
the
but how do
penalty
you
is very
prove that?
different.
How do you define intentional?
Exactly.
Therefore,
You can't prove intention. Intention's in
exactly. You
somebody's
can't. You
mind.
have to be in the
You
person's
can't prove
mind to prove it.
intention, man. Come on.
Of
If
course you
Toto
can't.
Not
Wolff
not
said,
in this
Prove intention.
context. You
How
cannot
do you
prove
prove whether
you
someone
cannot prove intention.
accidentally made a costing error on accounts, or did it on
how do you
Exactly.
purpose? You don't know
accidentally
that unless you're that
$1
person.
billion? How
How
do
do you
you
prove someone
accidentally
accidentally
spend?
buy too many bunkers?
Yeah, exactly.
Intent. For you to prove
You
intent, you
accidentally
have to
buy
be
too
in the
many
person's
sandwiches, of
head.
course.
You're not in the person's head, therefore you can't prove intent. You can
Okay,
only
so how
speculate.
does
You can
that
only
mean
speculate what the
This ain't a
person was
murder. This
doing.
ain't a murder trial. This ain't a murder trial
No,
where you can prove
it's
intent. This
not
is a different
exactly.
thing. You're talking about spending. Creative accounting exists for a
Spending
reason.
that you can actually have 10 different explanations for. So how do you prove the
I
actual one
mean,
you're saying
Christian
is what
Horner
the
said
person
they
is? It's
spent
just not, you can't do
400,000
that.
on catering. 400,000 on
Exactly.
catering.
How
I
do
mean,
you
Mercedes could
argue with
say,
that? How do you
we
argue with
spent
that?
£1 million on cleaning services.
I
That's what it is.
decided to buy food for $500,000. How do you prove that was not what I did?
No, I just
Look,
said we invested in newer cleaning products, so it cost us a
Especially
little
as well
Exactly.
because the audit isn't done actively. It's done like almost
I'm
a year
allowed to.
after, and they have to explain everything afterwards. So
All right,
the
let him go.
FIA are not
Let him
actively
go on.
looking at what people are actually doing.
Go on, Fifth Wheel.
Okay, so this is the point I'm trying to make here. Intention can be proved, right? Like let's say for instance, next year Mercedes says, "Fuck it, let's spend $50 million over the cap on this car development." That's obviously going to be spent on car development.
Yeah. But we
Obviously,
don't. I mean, when we say go over the cap, we don't mean go over. We don't mean like go spend half of what the budget is. I mean, if you go over by $1 million or $2 million, then you can say, oh, you know what I mean? Because Red Bull actually breached the cap by 1.8 million because they were banking on getting that tax credit from the government, which I saw your tweet, George, where you basically said it wasn't actually guaranteed that they were going to get it. So they could have. So in all likelihood, had they not gotten that refund credit, they would have actually breached the cap by 1.8 million. And that's the key thing that's being overlooked in this entire thing. It wasn't just 400,000; it was 1.8, and they were
okay.
just sitting there thinking, okay, we're going to get this tax credit, and they accounted for something that they didn't actually have receive as yet.
You have to remember as well that Formula One, I guess the average senior employee, I would put on about 60K a year. So if you're, you can hire arguably by breaching by 1 million an extra 12 or 13 maybe senior engineers in the team.
Binotto said
That could
for
make
that
a huge difference.
Binotto said for
And
that
just
400,000, they could have employed 4 or 5 other engineers at Maranello. So
yeah,
the idea.
exactly.
So when we say go over the cap, I mean we kind of exaggerating the figure, but breach it by $1 million too.
So Thanos, I just want to add to your point here real quickly, though. I don't know
Yeah,
if y'all can hear me.
Sorry, go on, Fifth. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. I had some bad connection for a second. Okay, so this is the point I want to get to, though. What you're saying, so let's say they go over by 250K or something. They build an extra front wing, whatever. So here's the question I have, though. So looking at the penalty that Red Bull got, right? You can make the argument whether or not it wasn't strong enough. I personally, I'm with you. I think that they should have been charged a lot more for breaching, a very clear rule, especially when the other teams clearly managed to figure it out, right? But let me ask this. Long-term vision for Mercedes for a second. Would it, even with that relatively, sort of slap on the wrist, they still did take a hit on CFD time. And with where Mercedes is standing right now in the development battle, would it be helpful for them to spend more money if it means that they can use CFD time less? It seems like the penalty in this case for Mercedes would hurt a lot more than spending 250K.
Yeah, but you're doing it on the assumption that if they overspend, they won't gain massively in performance. But if they,
will they get mass? Well, that's I guess the question. Are they going to get massive?
We don't know. We don't know. But if you can spend
why
more,
are we even having this conversation? Why are we having this
But
conversation?
if you can spend more, you can do more. So basically, you can gain more performance, right? Because the more money you spend, because we talked about it earlier, Mercedes was able to keep their dominance over everyone else because they could outspend everybody else. So if you can spend more money, you can add more performance, right? So so your theory is working on the basis that okay, they go over, but then they don't gain any performance. But what if they get? So it's a 50-50 thing. But I see where you're coming from.
The only thing I'll say to that, the only thing I'm saying about that, Thanos, though, is that do you think the reduction in CFD time is less than or equal to the performance you gain from 250K? I guess is the real question. And I get, Kingsley, you're right. Technically, this conversation is pointless, but hey, so is F1 in general. We're just having fun. So the conversation, I guess, the real question.
Yeah, because the hypothetical is we have the supposition is that Mercedes is not going to do that. If we're saying Red Bull now, then I will entertain this conversation. Not Mercedes. Mercedes always built in their design redundancies. For example, they if the margin is say plus or minus 5, Mercedes will stop at 3 or 2, for example, because they don't even want to
I
go
was I
close to
was
where you
told
will.
this exact same thing by an ex Mercedes designer. He worked on the 2017 and I think the 2018 Mercedes. Told the exact same thing. Said Mercedes is very risk averse. So he's
Risk
yeah. So he
adverse,
said
yes.
if the limit is 5 millimeters, they'd rather go. They're not going to go within 3 millimeters. They're not going. They're not going close to the line. They're very within the margins. They're not willing to take that sort of risk because
Yeah,
that's
because
just
the
not their.
brand is too powerful. The brand
But
is
now
too
you've
powerful.
fallen behind, isn't it? Isn't there an argument that it's the perfect time to start taking risks
Well,
because you
Yeah,
don't have
especially
anything to
this
I
lose?
mean,
season.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Kingsley. Last year they did it at Silverstone again. Remember, they put something on the car that they didn't test.
Yeah, they brought
They
a
just
car they didn't
so
test. A
you
patch they
have to.
didn't test,
So
rather, yeah.
again, they're in a position now where they don't have a chance. They have to take that risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree
Yeah,
with you.
it's a
I
different
think that's
mindset.
a really good point to make on the Mercedes side too, like their performance. Now that I have everyone's attention, I'm going to yield my time and let someone that rose their hand speak because I know they've been waiting for a minute.
It's
I know I'm
just
not
It's
the
it's
not a.
first.
just Enk,
Is
it's
this the
just my
U.S.
brother
House of
Enke. He's gonna
Congress?
come on here and rant
I think they
about
only
Max
do that in
Verstappen.
Congress where they use time,
Enke,
basically.
what's up? What's up, Enke?
Okay, it's not
Yeah,
costing today.
how's it, everyone? I was just listening and trying to think, right? If I'm Toto right now,
Okay, are
I'm
you
probably
costing today?
think no, not today.
Okay,
I'm good.
okay, okay.
I'm
Now
actually
we have that out of the way. Go on.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm not at all. I watched practice as well, and yeah, we're not looking that great. But I'm thinking if I'm Toto, right? I know for a fact, as far as drivers are concerned, I've got that box ticked, right? I'm probably saying to development and all these engineers, right? How soon can you get me a good car? Not necessarily a great car. We don't need to be anywhere near, as far as the car's concerned, as good as Red Bull. Because we know that other 10%, Lewis is going to top it up, right? To get us those championships. So
I agree.
I don't think it's that bad. I'm listening to the fifth or and I'm in a happy place at the moment. I don't think it's that bad. We just need a a decent car than what we have now. And I'm telling you, we're gonna fuck up Max Verstappen. I'm sure about that.
You know what Toto
You know,
should?
that's
Easier
that.
said than
You
done.
know what
No,
Toto should do? Toto should go to his engineers
yep.
and tell them, listen, I don't intend to put another dud in the lobby at Brooks at Brackley. So you
Bruh,
see,
No more
we
monsters.
already
He's
put
going to run out of
W13
space.
up
there
for
is no
you lot to
space
see.
for another car
I'm
there,
not putting
man.
another one in there. It's either you sort the shit out,
There,
I'm firing the whole lot of you.
they,
Do something.
We'll
yeah,
have to start stacking them up vertically or something.
Huh?
All the duds. We'll have to stack them up vertically.
What?
Hopefully it
there
doesn't
is no
come
No.
to that.
space for.
Actually,
Yeah, the W13 owns that space forever. Nothing's going to join it there. The W14 is
no,
not
I
a
put it
bad
in
car.
I'd just put it in
Mm.
the design office and say, you lot look on this every day. This is your mess. Fix
Yeah.
it. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Never again. The W13 was bad enough. Are you gonna give me? Are you give me another one?
Uh,
Oh, I'm gonna.
You know,
man.
Me and you're gonna have
you know,
arguments.
they're not.
Hmm?
No, I agree. I don't think Mercedes as a brand, Toto every Sunday afternoon he calls Ola in Stuttgart. I don't think the Germans would let that happen because the brand is massive. This is actually damaging Mercedes brand overall. Let's be very honest. Netflix and you name it, the media talks about Mercedes all the time. I don't think they will let it happen to be another failure season with drama. I think some senior figures at some point will take some drastic actions on
Yeah,
on
Mark my
on
word.
the design
Well,
team, on the
but that's the
technical
problem.
team.
It's not as if Mercedes own the F1 team outrightly, basically.
They
yeah,
So
this
only own a
goes back
third
to an
of the team
interesting
now
point, actually. Yeah, exactly. So if Toto Wolff
because
is in a
Ineos have got a
position
third,
where
and then Toto himself has a third, and so it's
the,
very
the only
difficult to force him out.
Yeah, but why
Toto's
would
got
you
That's
want
to
to
what they
be
force?
wanted.
basically
But
fire
why? But
himself to
why
be
would you want
fired,
to force
which is
Toto?
weird.
Why you want to force him out?
Why are you forcing Toto out?
I'm just
exactly.
saying if
Well, I
that's
mean,
if the board felt right, the management for whatever reason isn't. There's just so many issues with the team now. They've lost X figures or whatever. If they feel that they want someone new in, when the actual team principal, I'm just saying hypothetically, if they wanted someone new in, when your team principal owns a third of the team, and an equal share that you own, it's very difficult to go and tell him to.
But even if he didn't,
he'd have to do it of his own
but even
accord.
if he didn't,
He still won
yeah,
7
but even if he didn't own a third of the team, why would you want to fire him? He has presided over the most successful era of any team in the sports history. So why would you want to then get rid of him because they're having
you
a
can
bad
say
moment?
that about many different
Yeah,
organisations.
they started watching
Eventually,
Formula
things
One
just
yesterday.
reach a
Sorry?
point where it's time for someone new
Yeah,
to
but
come
you're
in.
talking about, that point happens when you're probably 2, 3, 4 years into a bad run. Mercedes are in a
Well, I think
Christian Horner did.
I think Toto actually gave himself. I mean, I would try and find his quotes because someone should hold them to him. But he said, "I will give myself 3 years to win again." So yeah, I think he should be held accountable for that. To be honest,
well
he
then
made
hold
that
him to
statement.
that. But the idea that he should be fired, I don't get it because again,
Okay,
hold on.
No,
Let
but
me finish.
it's all hypothetical, right? If it ever came to that, the board couldn't actually do that, really.
Yeah.
Because
that's my point. I'm
he's
not
a
saying
shareholder.
necessarily, all right, right now Toto should be fired.
But even if he,
I'm saying that like they couldn't do it if they wanted to because he owns a third of the team.
did not own a third of the team, the argument for him to be fired doesn't stack up.
Yeah, but that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is it's just I think the current arrangement they've got where they have 3 different parties that own a third of the team is partly contributing towards their downfall.
How does that contribute towards the downfall?
Because the Mercedes board have less influence, and I think naturally when you've got a massive company like that there's not one influencing party. You've got Ineos in there. You've got individuals in the team going and building boats and whatnot. There's just, I think there's not as much focus now.
I don't.
Well, it's interesting.
I don't think it's the
disagree.
conversation. Sorry, I don't think the conversation is around Toto. I don't think the he's on the firing line because at the end of the day, I think someone just mentioned he's been dominating the sport for the past 8 to 9 years. He's won 8 championships, right? But I think the responsibility will fall on the entire design and the technical team. I think those folks will be on the firing line at some point in the next 5 to 6 races, let's say in the next 2 months. Like, hey, what have you been doing? Seriously, you've got the money, you've got the resources, you've got the technology. We've given you all the sources that you needed to build a championship-winning car 2 years in a row, and you haven't delivered. So I think it won't be Toto on the firing line. I think it's the Mark Elliott's of these worlds, the you name it, whoever
he's under pressure this season.
I think well, that's the thing, really. So the reality is, Toto made the decision actually to promote him, Mike Elliott, to that position. So it's Toto's decision to say, well, enough is enough. You're clearly incompetent, and we need someone else in that position. And if Toto doesn't do that, then you would say that Toto should be on the firing line as well. I'm not saying Mike Elliott should be fired at this moment. I mean, we don't see what actually happens in the team, so we don't know if he is actually incompetent or not. But the reality is Toto needs to make some big calls, probably if this carries on and the team doesn't go to progress. And if he doesn't make those big calls, it will all fall on him.
Progress by like race 6, and this is actually where they are, and they've brought their upgrades. Then there's 100% going to be genuine questions getting asked.
Let me ask
And
this.
you know what?
For those that have been watching F1 for a while now, I'm curious, how does this sort of 2-year period for Mercedes, or I guess a year and a half, however long you want to call it, how does this compare to when Mercedes, right before they became really dominant in the turbo hybrid era? I mean, I think Mercedes, their board, everyone else understands, even the people joining F1 understand that these are long-term projects, right? No team comes in and wins the championship except for Braun, but that's, we all know that there's a lot of context there that changes that conversation a little bit. But for the most part, teams don't show up and win championships overnight. And in this case, I mean, they took 3-4 years to get up to speed to where they are, where they dominated the turbo hybrid era from 2014 onwards. And so I'm just thinking too, like, yeah, I can understand the frustration from fans, but the board and everyone else that's involved with this project also understand that these development things take a while. It can take years to get back on top. And I mean, maybe they're just going to say, hey, like, we're just going to wait until 2026 to become better if they are bad for 3 years in a row or 4
I
years.
agree with you.
I
Actually, I
mean,
agree with
I
you
agree,
because
but
for
there is
7 years, Horner didn't win anything in Red Bull, and he was there.
And no
Nobody
one
was calling
said
for him
Horner
to be
should be
sacked.
fired.
Yeah, he was there 7 years. He didn't win a
no,
shit, and
guys,
nobody was saying he should be fired. So I
guys.
don't know why.
I get that, and it's absolutely fine. But this is a Mercedes is not a newbie in the game. They've been there
Really?
for.
Well,
I mean, they've
define
been.
in what context are you
In what
speaking? Because
context, actually?
if you
Because
speak
I
in the
mean,
context as
when
a
we
factory
say
team, they're pretty much a newbie.
a newbie, yeah.
how can you
Well,
say that? I mean,
When
Because
was the well, they only came one
prior to
season in the 50s
19
and then disappeared,
prior to
basically.
weren't they
1954,
before
2010
Haas
was a
was the first team, or who was the last team to get added to the grid?
no.
It
I
was
mean
Haas.
no. I mean in newbie in the sense of
Compared to traditional
it's not
teams,
been a
like,
team.
yeah,
It's not been a team that's been around for like 20 odd years like Red Bull, because Red Bull's been around since 2005. So Red
Yeah,
Bull's a much
I think
older. So in that context, we mean like a newbie. It's not like a McLaren or Williams,
right.
Ferrari or a Renault.
And I want to toss this in too, Thanos. So as much I'm a Ferrari fan, I love Ferrari to death. But as much as I love them, one of the
I feel your
downsides
pain,
of the
dude.
what?
I feel your pain.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We can reminisce about that in a second. But I want to make this point because I think you might agree with this. As much I love Ferrari, I love all these things, but they're the opposite of a newbie team, right? I mean, they've been here since the beginning, and they have a tendency to play these internal politics and fire people quickly. Now, I personally wanted Bonotto gone because I think he's been with Ferrari for so long. He's given everything he has, and respect to him, he fired in Aki Ryuta. Thank fucking God. That
He
man is a
didn't fire him. He
bum.
just moved him.
Factory floor, thank God. But I'm just saying, to compare to the Mercedes situation, I'm a little concerned if Mercedes were to take the action of, all right, let's get the guillotines out and start firing engineers left and right, because then you're introducing this sort of hostile environment that has plagued Ferrari for so long. And that's
I
and
don't think they
actually,
necessarily need to
Ferrari
fire
has had
people,
more
but
team
they need to. I think
principles.
they need to go on a recruitment drive because they have
Oh,
lost quite a
oh,
significant number of people to
that's
other
true.
teams.
Very
oh.
true.
Who need
part
to
of
go
the
to
thing
recommend
that
drive?
drives into the Ferrari problem, though, is that it's Ferrari, it's the brand. I also think Mercedes could find themselves in a similar position because nobody expects an energy drink company really to be winning in Formula One. I think the motoring brands hate that Red Bull be a major global motoring brand like Mercedes and Ferrari. And that's why Toto Wolff will be under more pressure to deliver results than Red Bull.
But it's not just
than Christian Horner
any.
was for Red Bull, for example, because
It's not just
DJ
any
Matchich
energy.
used to race because he loved Formula One, really, and that was his
And he's
justification
dead.
for owning that.
And he's dead.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
just
mean, it's all changed, but
all right, hold on. I've got some people want to talk. Lauren, again, Lauren, GK, I'm going to let Lauren jump you for a second because she very rarely talks. What's up, Lauren?
I feel like the whole push to like fire, I hear it on the timeline all the time. And
Yeah.
it's like Mercedes are not winning, so now we must fire to break it to you, but it just isn't.
Lauren,
Like
you just chipped out a while
I
ago.
feel like if it got bad enough, I genuinely think Toto would probably step down. He wouldn't need to be fired. I think he would remove himself. But Toto isn't going to solve the fix. Also, like, I get it. Second year in a row, after today, it looks bad. But, like, we have to stop pretending that Mercedes are the first team in the history of Formula One to fuck up the regulations. And
Thank you.
if Christian Horner could be
Preach.
piddling around for 8 years, getting his ass slapped up and still keep a job, you know what? We can maybe give Toto a bit more than 1.5. Well, not even half a year. 1 year and a couple of weeks in a year. We can give him a minute. We had 8 years,
I think
or
the
we
difference
had
is,
8
though,
years of champagne. You lot can't take a bit of water? Come on. Some of you lot have been acting up. And it's like, have some
Preach.
dignity about yourselves. We're
Preach.
losing. It sucks.
Get at him, Lauren.
Like, I trust. I have to, because I want to see Lewis win another championship before he leaves. Like, we're going to get back up there. But some of you got no dignity in the loss. Sorry to say it, but I can hear what some people were saying about Mercedes/Lewis fans. Just no dignity. We'll get there. It's going to suck. But we don't need to fire Toto. We get somebody else in, and we have a Ferrari situation where every other year there's a new team principal and we're not getting anywhere, then what's going to be the complaint then?
I think, Laura, you're absolutely spot on. But I think there's this conversation, right? I think there's two parts of it. One, Mercedes getting it right on a long term, making sure that George is the star of that team on the long run. But then we've got limited time with Sir Lewis Hamilton, right? Because if he decides to sign for one more year or 2 more years, is this team good enough? Is this guy good enough for him to win his, you know, eighth title? I think that is where all of us are a bit upset, and
Of course, and I
after
get
all what
it.
happened in Abu Dhabi,
I get
and
it.
that's
And
the
you know what?
You just made
Today,
a
me and
key.
my friend were talking about it. We were, watching practice, and we were like, what if 21 was the last shot genuinely had? And you know what? It
yeah.
really is a crappy thing to think about. And I genuinely hope that's not the case. But you know what? The man has not had a shitty career. That we can say confidently. He's had one hell of
100%,
a career.
100%.
It would suck if 21 was genuinely the last year. And you know what, George? Imagine being in the Williams and coming to Mercedes, and this is the shit you got to drive.
I saw someone
I
tweet.
They
swear to
can
God.
drive you all around. But you
I
know
saw
what?
someone put out a tweet that
He
says
brought the bad luck
George.
to us. He
Someone
brought the
put a
bad
tweet
luck.
that says George came to Mercedes and they already immediately start performing badly. So he's the curse.
Yeah,
Like,
he's the
damn,
curse. Now we
damn
want
George.
Bottas. We want Bottas
We
back,
want back
please.
Bottas. Bring back
So,
Bottas.
interesting point on this then. There's obviously been talk, and it's all just talk that, there's probably no foundation to it, but it's an interesting point that Lewis is stalling renewing his contract because he wants to actually see whether Mercedes is the team to stay at.
Nah, I don't.
Is that
I
true,
don't.
mate? Is
That's
that
not
really
Lewis.
true? Is that
No,
That's
really
I
not
didn't
true?
say it was
Lewis.
true. I said it's all hearsay. But would it not make sense for him to do that, really? Because he wants to win that eighth world title. Nobody knows where Mercedes are actually going to stand for the next, few seasons. There could be an opening at Ferrari if Fred Vasseur decides he doesn't like his drivers.
Dude, drop
And he knows
Ferrari.
Lewis Hamilton very
Drop
well.
the Ferrari.
You think
Do
Lewis
Drop
you?
the
will go to
Lewis to
Ferrari?
Ferrari
I was saying,
conversation, man.
do you really think he would do that at
Drop the
this
Lewis to
stage in his
No,
Ferrari
no, no, no,
career?
no,
I
no,
conversation.
don't
no.
That's
know.
shit's not.
He likes
That's not
It's
gonna
not
happen.
Ferrari.
gonna happen.
That's
Not
not
You
gonna
gonna
never
happen.
know.
happen.
No, you never know. But look,
No,
Yeah,
we
a
know
you
lot of
this
do
people
one.
know.
said
We know
no.
this one. It's not gonna
A lot
happen.
of people said he wouldn't go to Mercedes, and he did.
That's a
Who
different
said no?
conversation.
No, nobody said he
He's
would
at the
go. They
tail
only
end of
said he
his
made a
career.
mistake. They said he made a mistake, not
Exactly.
that he
Many
wouldn't go.
people said he
They
was
didn't say he
mad to
shouldn't
do
go.
that.
They said he made a mistake.
Go to
Nobody knew
Ferrari.
any
Well,
of
well,
them.
no,
So it's a
it was
different thing.
both. People said he wasn't going to sign as well, didn't they? They said he would always stay at
What can you
McLaren.
point me to one? Because Lewis made sure he was leaving. He said he was leaving McLaren. The people who were bitter he was leaving said he made a mistake in going there. Even Martin Brundle actually said it. I think he made a mistake in going to.
I just think, I personally don't see it. I think that Lewis has always spoke very highly of Ferrari, and if
When
he
has he
saw it
spoke?
as the
Yeah.
right move,
didn't.
No.
It's
then
unlikely,
you
by the way.
can't
This is
rule it
plausible.
out.
No, he
No,
has
no, no,
spoken.
no.
He has spoken highly of Ferrari as a prestigious brand, but
Yes,
not as
the
a team
brand.
that he wants to drive for. He's
Yeah,
spoken
but
to
does he
them
want to
about
drive
them
for
in the sense of
Mercedes if the
respect.
car is,
What?
All of
What?
y'all are missing
Dude,
the
after
very
this
dude,
season, the
he's
car does
he's
not
been
improve. Does he want to drive for Mercedes, really?
I
Jordan.
think
The
he'll
guy
just
I
retire.
Jordan
I
wouldn't.
can't see
Jordan
him moving
I'd be
Mercedes
anywhere.
has
out after
been
this year if I was him, personally,
Jordan
because
Jordan Lewis has driven. Mercedes has been in Lewis's camp since he was at 12.
Mm-hmm.
He's not
yeah,
going to jump
absolutely, yeah.
ship. He's not going to go anywhere. He had the opportunity.
He's
Mark
retiring from
Ione,
that.
Mark Ione tried twice to sign him. Mark Ione sent his was it Mattiacci, the guy who
Matiachi,
fired
yeah.
Yeah,
Alonso,
but that was
his right
different,
hand
right?
man. Now,
That was
and
when
Mercedes
that
were
was
Sunoda was
generally
on.
had the
and that
best
was
car.
two. What? And that was so you're saying it's your argument is pretty much similar to those who saying Toto Wolff should be fired. That okay, Lewis, you don't have the best car, jump ship
Go
and
to
go find
another one.
another
Yeah.
the best car. No, like
Wait until that Ferrari started exploding
he
after race after
he
race. Yeah.
he went through was it 2007? He went through what 4 or 5 years of McLaren after winning that one championship. in the doldrums. Why now are we saying,
Well,
oh, you should just
he
jump
wasn't in the
ship?
Yeah, but
doldrums.
now
Like, he
Here's
competed
the
for the
thing, right,
title in
guys?
2010 and 2012.
Oh, please,
Lewis is
dude,
going to
stop,
McLaren. You
stop,
heard it here
stop.
first.
Like
He's
that
going
was
to go there and
Okay,
retire.
so
He's going to
Mercedes
go.
are
so
nowhere near
okay,
even where McLaren were those years.
Ben. So he competed for the championship in 2010 and 2012. He has won seven. He has won six in the
Six.
Mercedes. He has
Yeah,
won
but
six,
you need
seven
to look at
championships with Red Bull, with Mercedes.
you need to look at the reality of it though, where it's
What
like, see, if
reality?
Mercedes don't like, by say Canada, look like anywhere near like improving relative to Red Bull, he's gonna, like, why would you, like, realistically they're probably not going to fight for the title next year either, and they've just like fundamentally got these regs wrong.
No,
And
yeah,
that's
and
like, if you're
look, guys,
Lewis,
and I
So
you're
that's
think
going to
your
have to be
reason
having a
for him
serious
to
Hold on,
leave
let him
conversation
the
finish.
team.
Let
about,
him finish. Let him
do
finish.
you
Let him finish.
re-sign for Mercedes? So because if it's looking pretty realistic, they're not improving. If it's not looking like that they're going to challenge for the title next year, and therefore, let's be honest, probably not until 2026, is he really going to want to go and sign for Mercedes again to just kind of stay where they are now? So
Dude,
he'll either retire or look going elsewhere.
I mean, I
he
think that
helped.
Lewis is.
Hold on, Mercedes didn't get to where they are just on their own. He helped them to get to where they are. No,
Absolutely.
so he's also, because remember they said driver feedback is what they use to help develop the car. So where the car is right now is also,
And
Yeah,
Panos,
I'm sure that will
you
help.
can partially say it's also on him as well. So, but your argument is, I don't get your argument. It's like he should jump ship because things aren't going well now. That's
That,
not.
I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
he
not
mean,
should
even
go
that's
to
not
if
even
where
you no,
he's
hold on.
Lewis.
most
If you're
likely to get
if
his
you're
eighth title,
no
and if that's
no
not Mercedes, then he should at least consider rolling the dice
to
with
who
someone like
to who
Ferrari,
I'll tell
to
you
perhaps.
why.
Ferrari has
Ferrari
not won a
cannot
championship in
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 16
over a
years.
decade. In
Yeah.
16 years, and you're talking about go to Ferrari to do what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
they've
we're
not
also
had
talking
What?
Lewis
about
drive
Lewis
for them.
Hamilton. There's never been another
So
Lewis Hamilton who can give them
yes,
that extra
yes,
10%.
yes.
But
But
they still
look,
have their strategies there.
you're counting on lightning striking twice at the same spot. That's what you're counting on, and that he moves to Ferrari, and immediately Ferrari
Eventually,
becomes a
Ferrari are going to
championship
win
winning
Wait,
again.
team.
yeah,
y'all are
but
Like,
missing the bigger picture.
eventually,
if
You're
he
they'll
missing
win.
the
moves
bigger
to
picture
Ferrari,
here. Ben,
but
you're
Sorry.
if he moves
you
to
all are missing
Ferrari,
the bigger picture. Here's the bigger picture, all right? The bigger picture is this. Lewis is more than a racing driver at this point, right? He's got the
yeah,
Hamilton commission. He's got so many other things he's doing, and he's only allowed to do them because Mercedes has an agreement. They understand that Lewis is more than a driver at this point. He is a public figure that is making positive impact in the world. And I for one, love that. I respect him to death for doing that, right? Could he do that at Ferrari if he has to fight politics? Can he do
No
that
way.
at McLaren if he
He
has to
can't.
fight? Hang on. So the point I'm trying to make here is that all these conversations about Lewis leaving, especially Lewis leaving, but you can talk about it with any driver, but Lewis especially, when you're talking about someone who has a bigger impact outside the sport, who's doing things, even jumping out of airplanes or whatever he wants to do, Mercedes are fine with it because they know that he's brought them championships. He's a consistent performer. The only thing he's ever turned down is Top Gun. So, that's another aspect that's not being considered here is if he takes his talents to Ferrari, he's also taking his freedoms to Ferrari. And
Yeah, but
I don't think
there's
Ferrari's a team that's
also,
let him do those kinds of things or have those political protests that he wants to do or whatever he wants to say. And I think that factors in his decision making. I think it truly does.
He's not going
there's also the
anywhere.
fact he
I
might
know
just
that.
want
But I
to
think if he
like
has to
stop
move, he
racing.
can easily sign those ones into contract. That's not a big deal. If Ferrari desperately need him, Lewis can negotiate his contract to include those things. That's not even my point.
He
That's not
convinces
even my point. My
teams to
point is
make the car
Lewis is
black.
not going to Ferrari. Period. He's not going there. He's going to retire Mercedes, and that's it.
I've got
I mean,
something else for
I
you
was just
guys.
saying
I've
it,
got
for
something else
example,
for you guys.
Ferrari, but
You know what we need. You know what Mercedes needs. I was thinking about this, listening to everybody. We need another a father figure in the team, like Nicky Lauda. I honestly think the team needs someone like him to be
Nick
around
Rosberg.
Toto. Be, something around Toto, Lewis, George, the entire team. He was honestly, he was brilliant to all of them. Completely honest with you, I think the team needs someone to use a mentor, a coach, that senior on that level. Who is there with everybody and coaches. I really think they've missed some figure like that in the team
And
at the moment.
Mercedes is fine where they are. We're trying to deep dive overthink this thing way too much.
Yeah,
They're in a
well,
funk, right?
because
They're in
they're
a
not
funk right
performing,
now.
we are saying for all of
Sports
this conversation will stop.
success in
Yeah.
sport is cyclical. I think that's the
Okay,
word.
let's talk about
It's their
McLaren.
time now. Sorry?
Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about McLaren and how shit they are. Like, what does get to change the conversation?
That conversation's pretty much ended because you just said, "Look how shit they are." I mean, we can't.
But okay, so this is what I want to talk about this for a second.
Zach Brown. Zach Brown should leave that team. He doesn't do anything there.
So this is what I have to say about McLaren. I think it's really interesting. This is a very interesting situation where they have arguably one of the most talented drivers on the grid, right? Lando Norris.
Oh God.
Who's just not.
Kings, let the man
I feel
talk,
sorry
man.
for him.
All right.
No, I don't.
Can I finish?
Through all his comments, I do not feel sorry for Lando Norris.
All right.
Yo, let him
finish
his
to rot at the
point.
back of the grid
Let
for
him
the
finish
rest
his
of his
point.
career.
Let him finish his point, please, people. Let him finish his point. Let him finish.
Appreciate it, Thanos. Thank you. So, never thought I'd say that, but thank you, Thanos. But I'll say this. So, okay, I don't like Lando personally, but you got to sympathize with the fact that he's put belief into a team. He believes in a vision, and it's not coming true. What's funnier, okay, is Oscar Piastri. This man fucked up. That is hilarious. He said no to Alpine. He gave the impression that he cannot be trusted in negotiations for contracts, and he picked the worst team out of all of them. And
that's not really what happened.
That is not accurate. That
Yeah,
matter
like, what
went to a
actually,
court,
like,
and it was adjudged that he
Oh,
doesn't have a
please.
contract, so you can't say that.
Okay, so if you were team principal right now of Mercedes and you had to sign someone to replace Lewis Hamilton, who's retired, you think you can trust Oscar Piastri's word? I know I can't.
No, that's not what
I'd
happened,
sign
though.
Lewis's
Like,
unborn child.
He was with Piastri. The whole thing was that like he was basically Alpine could retain him for like 6 months.
Yeah,
and then after that point, he was free to then sign with someone else. And at that point, Alpine still had Alonso and Ocon as their drivers, and he would have had to either been a reserve driver or gone to Williams. And so at that point in time, when he signed his contract with McLaren, McLaren was the best. He didn't know that Alonso was going to jump ship. I'm sure if Alonso had jumped ship and he hadn't signed his contract, he would have went there. But he'd already signed his contract with McLaren because he was a free agent. So it wasn't. I'm sure he would have tried to have got out of his contract possibly if he could, but the contract was already signed.
Look, I understand.
So, like, there was nothing he could have done. Like, it wasn't his fault. It was Alpine just thought, all right, we can just take him back even though he's got a contract.
You know what though? He could have written that tweet in a better way, in a way that would have protected his own future, because he wrote that tweet and it was brave, and it was, and now it looks stupid because like he's burnt that bridge with Alpine, right? If he'd kind of been more
it was maybe an unwise tweet, but like it's
not
just
wise,
people were mistaken in terms of the whole like what happens in terms like he couldn't have gone to Alpine like that. Just like he had a contract with McLaren.
I get the legal proceedings. I get that he didn't have a seat at Alpine ready at the time of when he signed McLaren. I understand all those things. But what I am saying is this: F1 is a small business, man. Everyone knows everyone, and the bottom line is that he's pissed off people at Alpine, who is an engine provider, right? So he's now kind of saying, like, any team that is going to potentially run Alpine in the future, which we don't know if any teams are going to switch right now. Obviously, Alpine's the only team that uses the Alpine engine.
I don't think anyone's in any hurry to get a Renault engine in the back of the car at the moment.
Well, look, the point I'm trying to make is this. It's an interesting conversation about what a driver's career looks like before they get to F1. This is a conversation that's been bubbling up more and more because obviously there's a lot of talent that's coming into F1, and how they interact with teams and driver academies is the conversation. And so that's really what I want to talk about with this McLaren situation is like, what do? They've got 15 different drivers they've signed for God knows how many seats, and they have no development to back it up. And like, what happened?
So you're saying Piastri did that in Alonso?
Not only, he didn't, but also Daniel Ricciardo. That's a lesson. Like, Danny Rick pissed off Renault, left.
Oh, be careful, Diddy. The fifth is a Ricciardo fan, He's not going to like us shitting on Ricciardo.
Look,
be careful.
Look,
He's
going to take over Sergio Perez.
Right? There's the lesson you're trying to tell us, right, though?
I'm saying this about, so if you want to talk about Daniel Ricciardo, we can. Look, I love him to death. The reason why I quit the last session was because I couldn't finish my thought. And Thanos, you've been doing a pretty good job about that. So I really want to give you a shout out for that. I appreciate you letting me speak. I was just making a joke the last time and I couldn't finish the joke, so I got mad. But I'll say this about Daniel Ricciardo. I love him to death. What I don't understand is they had the telemetry data on him when McLaren were signing him. They should have known that he wouldn't have fit with that car. and he should have known that he wouldn't have fit with that car. And that's a mistake, and they both have to own up for it. Now, Daniel Ricciardo, it's sad. I think he still had like a fun career, and for what it's worth, he's getting paid to like dick around the world for fun. So like there are worse outcomes for his situation, but it is a sign, I think, at McLaren that there isn't a clear understanding. And the only point I want to add to this is that it's funny, or it's interesting, because it's happened since. I mean, since Lewis has been there effectively, but since that fine hit them, that $100 million fine, they cannot get their house together. Outside of winning that championship with the god talent that is Lewis Hamilton, they haven't figured it out, and they've just been ass, especially
because
after.
they lost the magic, because the magician left, man. That was Lewis, and that should be a warning to Mercedes.
And Ron Dennis too.
Look, getting rid of Ron Dennis leaving McLaren was probably a big mistake. But,
he came back though, and he was still crap.
Yeah, but I think he's better than.
To be fair, the Honda engine, he couldn't have done much with that.
Yeah,
like, the car barely left the garage.
But if they had stuck with it, they would have done better.
Alonso was the one reason they couldn't stick with it.
Was that with a Honda engine? I mean, look how bad they were in 2017, and then they went with Toro Rosso the year after, and then it was immediately improved. It wasn't just the engine came good.
That is actually said a lot.
The entire relationship just didn't work. There was just something fundamentally they just didn't work well together.
From the start, they insisted on this zero size concept. They basically said that you've got to build us an engine that will have completely wrapped bodywork at the rear and no extra cooling capacity, and that was from the start. And I just find that crazy that it's a new engine manufacturer. You're going to have to find your feet to force them to do that from the start. Almost set Honda up for failure, because they were always going to be playing catch up for a while, and they're always going to need that bit of room. But McLaren were basically just telling them what to do in terms of how the engine had to be packaged.
And that approach is crazy when you consider Ron Dennis said, "You're not going to win a championship being a customer team."
Yeah,
I thought you'd want to work with your supplier, to build something together.
Maybe
Aston Martin will be the.
Aston Martin might change that conversation.
Yeah, not going to happen, dude.
Maybe not championship, but it is interesting to see a customer team come back up and perform. Maybe not the same level. We don't know yet, obviously, so speculation. But if Aston Martin comes up and is challenging Mercedes for podiums or maybe even wins or whatever ends up happening, it's an interesting conversation, because looking ahead to the future, this assumption has been true.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for Formula One?
I think that's a really interesting question, Thanos. I don't know if I have an answer for you off the top of my head, but what I'm thinking off the top of my head, I can tell you, is that the valuation of teams is interesting, because they are trying to, I think, bring more engine manufacturers into the fold, right? Porsche was really close and then said no. Ford instead took up that offer and is going to be developing electrical components, I believe, for Red Bull. So that's an interesting point to make, and I think it's maybe an interesting conversation to try and get more OEMs back into F1, because Honda is still going to be around, and Andretti wants to join, and AlphaTauri might sell. So to answer your question, I don't know, but it's a very interesting point.
Well, it could only be good for Formula One if a factory team gets beat by a customer team, because then it tells you in some ways that it's the restrictions that they've put in place are working.
Well, so I think the counter to that, I would say, is the money that it takes to get into F1 already is so high that only OEMs can get in the first place. So it depends on what F1's goal is. If they want to make this a sport where you can join in as a team that is not making your own engines, can make your own components, and is more reliant on driver capability, then I think it's a bad look. But if their goal is to maintain the importance of having teams build their own cars, build their own engines, and obviously recruit good talent, then it's good for F1. So it's really, what does F1's vision look like in the future?
Not having Lewis win.
It's bad optics for something that's supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport, personally. I think the idea that big brands win the big prizes in Formula One is what it should be. It should be the best the best automotive manufacturers in the world at the front. And I don't have a lot of love for the independent teams, because I feel like the image, it removes what's special about Formula One at the moment that we have.
It removes what's special about sports, and it's like, imagine the Premier League saying, "Oh, Man City, you're winning too much, so you're gonna have to lend some of your players to Brentford to balance the scale.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
What makes you think?
Sport is not fair in that context.
And it makes
The
you
only
think.
thing fair about sport is the rules. The rules is there to make it fair, but how it after that,
Well,
that's it.
that doesn't even apply to F1, does it? The rules, huh? So
What's
that is what
what's
it is.
rules?
But I'll say this though, I think it's interesting because it's also an interesting conversation about McLaren, like we were talking about, because they need to get an engine provider, and I think they need to suck it up and say, "All right, Honda, we're going to work together again, and we're not going to be toxic about it."
Yeah, but
because I don't see any. That's
well,
the
there's
only
rumours of
saving grace
that
for
that
McLaren.
might be happening.
That's if Honda wants them back.
It's not even the Honda. That's the error of that car is fundamentally wrong. Is it not?
They need to fire Zach Brown.
Aston
You
Martin
like
takes
talking about firing Toto Wolff? They should fire Zach Brown because
Zach
he
Brown
just
is
made that
just
team.
he
He just made that
doesn't
team
even know what
worse.
he's just a PR guy, just running around looking for advertisers.
McLaren are competing in every goddamn race series you can think of. That's of note. So
I'm not winning in any of them.
Exactly.
The thing is, though, he's doing really well with the actual road car front, and that's probably what they're more interested in because that's what makes money.
Move him to the road car division then.
maybe they will.
Moving from the race team to the road car.
From his perspective, or from the board's perspective, they're probably looking at it going, the F1 team's not doing too well, but at least we're making a load of money off all these supercars, so...
And you know what?
Nice
this is a question. And this is a question. This is something I've thought about for years. McLaren make road cars. Why have they never collaborated with the company that actually makes the engines for their road cars and build their own power units?
Aston Martin does that.
Huh?
Who makes the McLaren engines right now?
I don't know.
Do they not make their own?
No, McLaren makes their own engines. They're based off of Nissan design, but McLaren manufactures their own engines for road cars.
Well, then why can't they do
They're
the same
based off. They're actually interestingly based off a V8 engine that Nissan designed for its GT racing cars.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for bringing that in. Because compared to Aston Martin, who I think they source their engines from Mercedes, right?
Mercedes.
Yeah, that's really
man. McLaren builds their own engine. The V8 and V6 engines that they run in their cars are built by them. Designed and built by them.
Aren't some Mercedes engine and some Mercedes actual Renault engines?
Yeah, that's for Oh yeah. Renault and Mercedes had a tie-up, especially for their commercial vehicle and their work vehicles. And also, because Infiniti, Nissan, and Mercedes had a little bit of a tie-up on the business side. Yeah, so for a few other segments they shared technology and parts and engines as well.
Okay, cool. I figured. Because I remember reading about
that. While I have the mic, someone made a point about teams. Yeah, man. Yeah. One moment there, guys. Man.
Yeah, man.
No, it's not good. You need to check something.
Bro, how many kids are on right now, man?
Man. Sorry about that, guys. Yes, I'm actually in the office, but where I'm is work time. But so what I was saying is that someone made a point about Williams being about teams. It's bad for the sport when teams are beating manufacturers. I don't think so. I think that Formula One is about engineering skill and how you use what you have to the best of your ability. Because anybody remember in the early 90s when Williams used to dominate?
Yep.
And I thought their engineering really shone through as well. I mean, it was amazing what those engineers could do. In fact, I think in '94 they had to ban the Williams car because it was just too advanced, and everybody would run bankrupt trying to copy them.
Yeah, but that was at a period when they didn't have OEMs. You didn't really have engine manufacturers in the sport.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's a good point. I think Renault was probably the only manufacturer at that time, and Ferrari, and I don't remember anybody else.
They had Honda, Renault, Honda.
Yeah, Honda as well.
And Ford, who were doing the Cosworth engines. So
Yeah, I guess the philosophy was a bit different at the time still, but I think it really is about engineering skill and how you use what you have.
and who has the most
And
money?
that's, yeah. And I think that's one of the things I mean, I've argued this with friends many times, but I don't think the cost cap. I understand the reasoning behind it, but I think it's too low. That's what I think.
I
And it's
agree.
going to get
I,
lower
I agree. It's
because
too low.
yeah,
this year's $140 million. It
yeah.
reduced from
$35.
I think
5 million
yeah because
to
35.
what you're
135.
doing is that you're now restricting the ability of the teams to innovate and actually really get things right. Because now, I was arguing with about a friend about this like probably a week ago. Why is there just 3 days of testing?
Yeah,
That's a
because I
good question.
think, yeah.
But going
Yeah,
back to
I know.
innovation,
I think
go-
this idea that you're restricting
Yeah,
innovation, I don't really. I think if you want to bring out the best in engineers, you give them
yeah.
restrictions, give them constraint on what to design around, and that's where the ingenuity shines through, as opposed to this is an unlimited amount of money, build what you want to build. I guess I understand money can do that, but some of the best engineers in the world, if you give them constraint, that is where the ingenuity shines through. And I don't think the money is a problem per se, because if you leave it to
Mm,
them, Mercedes and Red Bulls and Ferrari will develop cars up to half a
mm,
billion euro or dollar, for example, whereas teams like um, uh, uh, Williams, for example,
mm,
Haas can't even get up to. In fact, at the moment, was it last year?
yeah,
Haas couldn't even spend their
but
allocation for the budget. So that
yeah.
tells you that if you want to balance it out, I think the budget cap is fine. It's just that they have
Well,
to
all right,
implement it the way it should be and not just allow team to develop. If, for example,
all right.
if you leave Mercedes to develop a car for $1 billion,
Yeah.
then what's the point of the sport? Therefore, the only people who has the money will actually then build the best
No,
cars
no,
out there.
no. Well, all right. So I don't disagree with the idea of a cost cap. I just think it's too low.
Agreed. I
Because
think
all
yeah, it
right,
could be.
so
Yeah,
you made a good point, Kingsley, about letting teams run well. Because one of the things with motorsport that we all know is that it's extremely expensive. And if you let teams run amok and they have the biggest budgets and all of that,
What
when
is
they start
expensive
winning,
is
then their boards are gonna ask, why are we spending so much money? It's the same thing that happened with Audi in WEC. They were nominating so much. They're like, okay, why are we spending so much money? Same thing with Porsche.
what is really expensive in current hybrid era is the MGU-H part of the car, which is
Right.
the one they want to take out of the car for the next
Yeah.
regulation,
which
which is
they
fine.
Yeah.
took
So
out.
if you are taking out
Yeah.
those expensive parts, and then that means you can actually run on a good budget. I understand that Formula One is an expensive sport, but I also agree that there should be a cost cap. Otherwise, the teams that have the resources will just run away with it,
so.
and
I'll
the
say
rest will
this,
just be
Hans.
pleased.
So I'll say this, and Constantinople, by the way, great name, great. I like it. I like it. I want to get you out, but
No problem.
I want to say
He
this
went to
too.
Calabar. Boo.
No,
I want
no,
to.
no, no. I didn't go. No, no, I didn't go to Calabar. I went to
Oh,
Campion actually.
boo. Oh, boo.
So I
Yeah.
want to say this. I want to say this about the cost cap. So, especially with this conversation that we're having about require of like maybe it looking like you need to make your own engine to really be successful in F1. If
Yeah.
that's the case, effectively we're saying that car manufacturers are really the main target for expansion of F1 or for teams that want to sell, right? So if that's the case, then there has to be more of an argument than just marketing, right? Like McLaren, for instance, like they've got these like panels that show all their sponsors and stuff, and that's great. But it doesn't matter if they're 16th and they're not on the TV, right? So the advertising argument for opening an F1 team is only valid if you are on the TV screen, which means that you have to get additional value, and that additional value comes from the innovation that is coming from F1 in general, from the design, from whether it's learning about CFD and how you can utilize that on cars or engine performance or whatever it is, there should be some extra benefit. And with the cost cap so low, it's hard to make the argument that innovation is even being progressed in F1 in any meaningful way for
Exactly.
manufacturer. And so I agree with your point there because I don't see other manufacturers looking at this and saying, well, it's not a spec series, but it might as well be because we can only spend 140 million and we only have a certain limit to our performance. And so I think that's the important conversation point when we're talking about establishing a cost cap, yes, it should exist. Teams shouldn't be able to spend $500 million, but they shouldn't be limited to the point where there's no economic or business case to bring another your car company into the sport. So I agree.
Well, this is arguably why Formula E has seen just basically all the big manufacturers just leave and cycle around. Like they're literally just leaving constantly, replacing with another one. They're all giving it a try because they all go in and they don't actually gain anything from being in Formula E, because this claim that it helps them develop their electric cars for the road is complete nonsense, because it's basically a spec series for the aero.
Yeah,
They have a
regulations
spec
are way
battery.
too restricted. That's true.
Yeah, the only thing they can actually do is change the drivetrain. But even then, basically, they banned a load of stuff like, oh, you can't have the multi-gear drivetrain, you can't have the dual axis drivetrain, you've got to have this. So really, it's, Formula E, in my opinion, is a spec series. No matter what they say about it, basically is just a glorified spec series. And it's the reason why Mercedes have left, because it's not useful from that perspective. And the same thing could happen in Formula One if the cost cap's too low, because, like you say, it's basically just become a glorified spec series almost, where there is nothing to actually learn by being there.
Yeah, I agree, because the whole draw of Formula One is innovation. To me,
exactly.
Yeah, innovation is why you Yeah, man. Innovation is why manufacturers spend what they spend, because they know that it.
I think innovation is part of it, Kingsley, but I think that the biggest case right now is commercial. I think it's ad rights because of how big.
And ad, of course, definitely, 100%. When Ferrari was winning championships left, right, and center, they couldn't make enough road cars to sell.
Well, that wasn't the issue. They were selling too many cigarettes. That's the problem. They're selling too many damn cigarettes.
That too.
Winning.
That too.
That's what happened there. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah. When they were winning, they were selling so many cars. The marketing was like they didn't really have to advertise at that time, because there was all you have to do when you bought your Ferrari, your road Ferrari, you'd see how many manufacturer. You'd see that, you look for that little plaque with all the manufacturer, all the years that they won the constructor titles.
So
back to back.
2 points on that, Hansen-Opel. I gotta ask you, first of all, I thought Ferrari has like a cap on how many cars they build per year. So I'm curious as to how they sold more cars if they're limiting the production.
No, well, one I was referring to, like, probably maybe 20 years ago when they were dominating.
Okay.
They were setting records at that, because they were making they went from making selling probably about 1,000 cars a year to probably like 6,000-7,000 when Michael Schumacher was dominating back at that time. Now they have the strength of the brand is such that they don't want to sell too many cars to, aka dilute the value of the brand. So that's why they decided, all right, let's have a cap, so that they can protect the value of the products that they sell to the customers. Because one of the reasons why people buy those cars, not just to say you have a Ferrari, but just to also keep the value of the car that you have.
The second point I wanted to say to your point, Hansen-Opel. So this was a video that Sky Sports did, but it's a sit down. It's on YouTube. It's a sit down with Lewis and with Toto, and they're just. This was right before that Lewis signed his contract extension, I think back in 2019 or 2020. Someone can go back and find the video. But Toto said that the car's value from an advertising standpoint was something like $2 billion. And Lewis said, okay, that's good to know, because I'm going to use that in negotiations.
Actually, he said it when he joined, it was something, the advertising value was 12 million or something like that, and it jumped to 2 point billion. So the value, so it really did skyrocket.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that's before 2021. That's before Drive to Survive already brought fans in, but it exploded during 2021. So that's another.
Yeah, because that's true. Because, all right, so I live in Jamaica, right, and I've been following how the local car scene has developed and exploded over the last maybe 10 years. So if you look at the growth of the brand is not just necessarily the Mercedes brand that has grown, but the AMG brand. I was talking to somebody today not today, probably a couple of weeks ago, who works at the main dealer here in Jamaica, and over 50% of the models that they sell are AMGs, or in some way have been AMG-fied, quote unquote. And that to me is because of the rise of the popularity of the AMG brand. And that's definitely because of how well Mercedes has been doing in their series. That's one, GT3, and most definitely Formula One. The rise, AMG has been so, because of the dominance they have over the last 9 years,
And wasn't that a
they've been
strategic
selling
move?
tons of AMGs.
Wasn't that a strategic move for Mercedes? Because I remember I can't remember what year it was, where they said they took the Benz branding off the car,
Right.
and it's not predominantly AMG, and they said
Yeah.
that's to give more recognition to the AMG brand.
Right.
So it's worked.
Exactly. What that helped is not just you don't just buy the AMG packet. No, you're buying the actual full fat performance AMG car, and I think that has to also do. That has a lot to be. There's a lot to be attributed to the performance that they've had, the success that they've had in their in Formula One and endurance racing.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, man.
So where do we finish tomorrow, Thanos? Qualifier. I want to wrap this up. Basically, we've been here for.
P20. P20.
Oh God. Why you?
Why not just go along? Everybody's doom and gloom. We're finishing
I'm
P20.
gonna say 5 and 6, but like it's
But that's just like last year. Wow.
Yeah, but the only way I can see we finish on a podium is if there's reliability issues for one of the top teams and Fernando Alonso crash out. You know what I'm saying? That's the only way I can see.
I'll be having I'll be online first thing after the race Sunday, so we can have that conversation because I'm big enough. I'm a big boy. My back's broad, so I can.
It's gonna be annoying to see.
We're gonna beat Aston. What's that?
Fernando,
You're breaking up.
We're breaking up, man.
Yes, that's what happened to people who go to Campion College.
Them ones there. Just out of curiosity, and I just want to know this. Now, you see, when it comes to Mercedes and what they do, they find a sweet spot of the car, and then they do something with the car to try and get a new setup, and it don't work, and they have to go back to the original setup. Wouldn't you class that as history repeating itself? That if you've got a sweet spot on a setup, to leave the car as it is?
No, because the track changes, dude.
The track changes, and you also want to know the range of the car, how fast you can push it. So you can't just
it might be good.
Find it
might be good on
and
Friday.
on it. Yeah,
it might be good on Friday, and then Saturday the track conditions change drastically. Then what you're gonna you have to adapt. You can't just stick to the one. No, because remember, the conditions is somewhat unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question outside this context, maybe a fun one. Which pairs would have the most fights among each other? Would it be Hulkenberg and Magnussen, Lando, PS3, or Max and Checo?
You actually said Max and Checo. Come on, man, dude, stop it.
No, that's
don't
not
put them in that
Hockenberg,
I'm expecting
that's a
Checo to
very
show some balls.
interesting lineup, basically, that is coming up there. And both of them are actually hot-headed in a way. But I know Hockenberg is going to be calmer than what's his guy's name? Mark Erickson or whatever his name is. So I don't know. There was something I read about them that they weren't really on speaking terms lately until they got to
because the last time they had a beef, K-Mag said to Hulkenberg, "Suck my balls."
Okay. So
K-Mag says, "Suck my balls." So
I can see why
I don't know.
Did y'all see what Hulkenberg said after? I got to find the exact quote, but he said he was hugging and tugging and rubbing on him. I'm not even joking. That's a direct quote. That's a
Okay.
direct quote. Let me go find it.
Yeah, he said that. He said it in a press conference. Yeah, after.
What about
I
the
mean,
wild card of
the sixth.
Gasly and Ocon? Because
Ooh.
they have history way back. It's almost like
Yeah, that's
Lewis
the
Nico.
fiery team. They're gonna
Yeah, they
fight.
actually said they are not friends, but they're going to raise as professional in the team
Oh,
to the best
please.
of their abilities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but everyone
forget all
says
that.
that, and then they get a racing car, then they're not professional anymore.
What I just love
Hey.
about Alpine, let me tell you what I love about Alpine, okay? This season, every race weekend, we don't know what's going to explode in that team. It could be the drivers, it could be the engine, it could be their legal team, it could be their team principal, it could be their damn pit stop team. Anything can explode on Alpine, and I'm here for it. I can't wait to see them fist fight, personally.
Yeah, I think the biggest drama is going to be at Ferrari.
Is it Ferrari?
Yeah, I think the biggest drama
No.
this year is going to be at Ferrari because I think Ferrari is just going to do what Ferrari's done every single year.
Yeah, but
We don't
there's a
know.
different person in charge now. That
Yeah,
might
but
not stand for that
you,
nonsense.
you know what? It's one thing for Vasseur to be successful in GP2 lower categories and so on. It's another thing running Ferrari. Ferrari is an
Different.
institution.
That
Yeah,
is
You know,
true.
different.
Yeah,
if
it's going to be under a
everyone
lot of different pressure.
exactly everyone looks good out until they get to Ferrari and they realize, yeah, it's because you're not just the team principal of a team. You're the team principal of a nation.
You
Because
know what? They
Ferrari
shouldn't have
is a
fired Arriva
nation
Bene.
as itself. Huh?
That they shouldn't have fired Arriva Bene. That guy was, he's just ice cold. He had that part of not being over, affected by the emotional side of it. I think because he was so chilled and stuff.
Well,
I wouldn't. I
But
think
he's
that
the
after
was the
after the
one to
Marlboro
go
man,
season
away
they
isn't he?
had,
personally.
after the season they
He's,
had, they needed to fire
he's
him.
the Marlboro man because that's his background, wasn't it? Philip Morrison, he was a marketing guy, Marlboro man. But
Yeah.
look,
Fellas, what
Ferrari
is
has
the
been through how many team principals in the lot since 2010?
enough,
That's
boy?
a lot.
A lot of
That's
team principals. What is the
And you talk,
situation between Ocon and Gasly anyway? Like, I know they don't like each other, but what's the actual backstory? Like,
I don't
Well,
know.
they were
They
friends
hate
from
each other from
children. They used to basically when they started out their motorsport career, they were
yeah,
karting at the same track. They lived very close to each other. They used to
mm,
travel,
yeah,
and I think there's a bit of history there, like friendly history, but it's kind of like the Nico Lewis thing where you put them in the same car in Formula One, it just kind of explodes, and there's a
Yeah, but the
chance for it
Nico
to go
Lewis thing was
Mate,
one
the other way.
person.
I have some quotes
Nico
for
was
you
just
from
jealous.
Gasly. I have some quotes for you. So he recounted apparently on the Beyond the Grid. He did some interview a while back. He said on the subject of Ocon and Gasly because they're from like the same town and everything. But he said we used to spend so much time together, train at the grid, and then they started to get really competitive. And he said at this point he does not consider him a friend. Now this was published a couple of years ago. This article was published in 2020, actually 2022, so relatively up to date. Now they've seen. I will say this though, this is some top tier drama. But if you look at the post about the NBA Paris game where Charles Leclerc and Gasly went, Charles and Gasly posted pictures of each other. Neither of them included Esteban Ocon. Coincidence? I think not.
Uh,
who do you
oh
think
well.
is number one driver for that team? Who do you think is the number one driver?
If you
It's going
ask,
to be Ocon. At
if
least
you ask
Ocon is
each
the
of
one
them,
that's
they'll
been there
say
for a
them.
while. You have
If you
to be
ask each
Ocon.
of them, they'll say themselves. So I don't
No,
know. I don't.
I think Ocon is based on the fact that he's been there longer. Other than that, no other claim.
Yeah,
Then
because
if
they're
it's,
pretty much the same. They're not. There's not much difference between them.
they are not the
I
same.
don't think.
Not the
Yeah, I
same.
mean, in terms of talent pool, I don't think there's that much.
Oh,
There's that big a gap between them. I think
are
they're
you
pretty
see?
much. Yeah, I
Didn't
think they're pretty
Ocon
much the
win
same.
one of the lower series?
Yeah, Ocon won F3, but
Yeah, he did.
Gasly, when he was, I can't remember which championship Gasly was leading, and then Red Bull pulled him out for some. I can't remember what it was, and he ended up having to go and race in Japan in
It's
the
Japan. Okay, I remember that year.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
last year.
But
Yeah.
he was racing in another European series where he was actually leading the championship by a good
Yeah.
margin, and they took him out. I don't know if they pulled him out to do something in Formula One, and
This
then
summer.
it didn't work, and he ended up going into Japan to race for I think a year, and I think he won the championship in Japan. I could be wrong, but I need to check that. Cameron, what's up? Here comes doom and gloom.
You know what I'm saying? Cameron,
I'm not even going to talk about it. There will be no told you so's or patting myself on the back. It's all a bit depressing. I like the way the space is
You
going.
just did, Cameron. You just did.
I don't think I did. I think I think if anything, I did in the conditional, but I didn't actually. Let's be honest. But moving away from that, I just wanted to say about Ocon. Anthony Davidson was talking. I don't know if you guys heard him the other day chatting about it. That Ocon's such a nice guy in person, but when you speak to all the drivers on the grid, not one of them, to a man, has a good word to say about him. They all think he's a winker, for want of a better word.
Oh, Ocon?
Yeah. Everybody thinks he's a douchebag, notwithstanding the fact that when you meet him and shake his hand, he appears like a statesmanly guy, right? Very, very nice, very well-to-do and clean cut. But all of them on the grid think he's an absolute jerk off.
Is that just on track or just as a person?
As a person, apparently.
Wow. Because I'm wondering how he can never ever get along with anybody, any other drivers.
I think that's interesting, Cameron, because I've heard, this is very, very much, so please take this with a grain of salt, but I've heard conversations about Gasly's time at Red Bull too, and people were saying that he, it was a high pressure situation, but he was obviously not performing very well, and he just wasn't really gelling with the team. He wasn't creating the environment necessary for success, and it really got to him. That may be part of the reason why he was dropped in the first place, was he was slow, but also his presence in the team wasn't the most positive.
I think with that, it was a lot of. They implied that he blamed the engineers a lot for the fact that he didn't perform, and basically blamed them for not helping him set the car, and didn't listen to what they said, as opposed to just accepting that he needed to go out and be faster. I think created a sour relationship, and it's basically why the team got rid of him. Really, it's because he just wasn't gelling with the team, like you say.
Accountability, I think, is the word that you're looking for, Jordan. That's exactly what Gasly lacks a little bit of.
Well, no disrespect though, Red Bull go through drivers like they just go through drivers like if it's not look Kvyat, then they pulled him back to Toro Rosso, Gasly, and Red Bull went back to Toro Rosso, Albon, and what Albon posted the other day. I'm actually surprised he had the balls to actually do that, saying that how the car is only set up for Max Verstappen. So there is, and I can see why Ricciardo left Red Bull in the first place, because there's the same thing that happened with Vettel. Vettel was the golden boy for Red Bull, innit? That's why Webber couldn't get on with him. And the same thing, Ricciardo. As soon as Verstappen came onto the scene and Verstappen was quicker than him, everything just aligned to Verstappen. And yeah, boy, I feel sorry for the Red Bull. I feel sorry for any Red Bull driver, boy, because it's you can't win. It's you can't challenge Verstappen. Verstappen is their golden boy. And I said it in the other space. If I was on my deathbed and I had an opportunity to drive for Red Bull, I'd tell them to fuck off, mate. I'm sorry to say, but I would not be wanted to be driving for a team like that, because one, me and Verstappen will be coming to blows, but I'll be like, fuck you, I'm off. Coming to blows. The way that they operate as a team is fucking disgusting.
But it's working.
Yeah,
it's winning them championship, though.
No. But in terms of trying to look at Mercedes, Mercedes.
Anthony, let me ask you this:
it's equal opportunity at Mercedes, but when it comes to Red Bull, it's either it's one
I hear
driver.
you. I hear you. So if you put Mars against Perez, do you think Perez can beat Mars on any given day, for example?
If he's given the opportunity,
I don't care. Even if he's given 10 steps ahead, he's not going to beat Mars. They are not the same class.
So why don't they give him that chance then? If
exactly,
if you have two drivers,
what are they afraid of?
Exactly.
No, they're not afraid. Here's what: if you have two drivers, and then you can argue if the model doesn't work, but for all intent of the model works for them. So it's everybody can operate a team the way Mercedes operate a team. So for sometimes I am glad Mercedes don't do that, but it's not as if it's a detriment to Red Bull, for example. That if a team figure out that their lead driver actually love a car in a particular way, they are going to develop that car along those lines. Now, it is left for the other driver to try and they catch up, because even if Red Bull design a car for, say, Checo, for example, or equally for them, there is no way over a season Perez will beat Max. It's not going to happen. So the idea
But
that,
we don't know that though,
oh,
because
I
look
know
what happened.
that there you
Look
can
what
see.
look what happened last season though, when I think it was the underfloor of the car and all that they gave Verstappen, but they gave Checo had an old one and he was complaining. And even if you look at Drive to Survive, Toto Wolff literally said that give Checo the fucking car in it. Watch the clip, bro. Like that
Well,
was
They
Albon.
were just
So
for the
interestingly, Alex
cameras.
Albon said recently, it's the first time anyone had actually dared to say this, but he said recently that nobody who goes there basically has any chance because they literally set up the entire car around Max's driving style.
There you
Perez
go.
doesn't
Because
actually
he
get a
is
say in
their
the
lead
setup really at all.
driver. He
Doesn't
because
doesn't matter.
he's
Doesn't
But
matter if you're the lead driver, bro. That's
hold on a
Yeah,
second,
Max is
Anthony.
not a lead driver.
I just want to say this super quickly, though. You guys know that the quickest, it's coincidence, but the quickest type of F1 car, just by nature, by definition, because of the way the driving dynamic of what F1 is that twitchy front end car that Max likes. So if you want to build a quick car and you want a quick driver to drive it, then that's the characteristics that you're going to bake into your car. Twitchy front end, a bit unstable on the rear, and you're going to give it to your driver, and it's his challenge to then manage it right. It's Checo's downfall that he doesn't like that, right? He likes the rear limited tracks and he likes a stable rear end. That's just not his style. So Anthony, to your point, bruv, as much as I'd love to agree with you on the Checo could beat Max Verstappen point, I don't think even if they did give him a car for 23 races, both of them a car that favoured Checo, I don't think he'd see which way Max goes ultimately.
he cannot. He can put a finger on Max. It's not a class. There's different class entirely.
Yeah, he doesn't see which way Max goes.
yeah.
He's not on that level. There's levels,
Yeah, but
Anthony.
look what happened at the
All right
Bahrain
then,
last
guys.
season though.
All right then, guys.
He outperformed Max, innit?
Where?
Yeah, over a
When was
season,
that,
can he
Anthony?
sustain it? Can he
Anthony,
sustain it over a season? That's the point.
just to be precise on this, Anthony, you'll see Checo around the likes of Singapore and Monaco. To be fair, Max was probably going to outperform him around Monaco even before he stacked it deliberately or otherwise. But then Singapore, Max didn't have a fantastic weekend, and again, Singapore is a real limited track, and that favours Checo's style. So you see the same thing again this year, Anthony. Watch. Bet me any money. Monaco, he'll perform well because that's the type of track that he likes, and you'll see him go well around. Maybe even Bahrain because it's limited, but you'll see him go well around Monaco, Singapore, anything that's like slow and rear limited. That's Checo's thing. The rest of them, something like Spa, no chance, mate.
Okay, guys. On that note, I think we're going to come to an end. We've been here for a very long time. I'm tired. I'm tired, and I need to eat some food. But it was as usual. It was a
much needed coping session, I think.
What? Dude, this
a much needed coping session.
Yeah, an eventful day, and we'll wait to see what happens in the fans.
Yeah, so tomorrow we'll come back again for therapy. I'll be a therapist tomorrow after qualifying. I probably after so I'll probably around probably around the same time tomorrow again, 5:30.
What time?
I'm talking about what? Sometime in the morning. Use your TV. Your TV have a schedule. Use it, man.
TV guide.
Yeah, the TV has a guide. Use it, man.
At 5 tomorrow, isn't it?
Use your TV guide, dude. Don't stop asking us.
Yeah, I know.
That's not what we're here for.
We'll
But
see
anyway.
Aston Martin dominant tomorrow, is it just...
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Anthony,
Okay.
you will be shocked tomorrow.
Yeah, we are. But anyway, we'll be back here tomorrow. We're going to either be here crying, oh, the Aston Martin spanked us, or we're going to be here celebrating that we actually qualified P7. All right? But either way, we'll be here tomorrow again, talking as usual. And as like I always say, it's nice having you here. It was a good conversation, and we'll do it again tomorrow. So wherever you are in the world, stay safe, be good. Don't do the things I do because I'm definitely going to get into trouble for it. But either way, all right, I'm out, and we're done. Peace.
See you guys. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Man.
Bye.
Bye.